Chapter 1241. Greetings, Divine King Lin. Bai Yu regained her senses, and her eyes regained their clarity. She swayed her slender waist and bowed slightly. Everyone in the 10-square world knew that Lin Yu had a close relationship with their ancestor, Bai Xiaoli. Now that they saw Lin Yu, they were naturally extremely respectful. Even though Bai Yu was now the lord of a sacred ground. I want to go to the secret ground of the sacred island and see Bai Xiaoli's current state, Lin Yu said. After hearing Qing Feng's description and considering the impending black calamity, he was afraid that Bai Xiaoli, who had been in a deep slumber, might have met with an accident. This, Bai Yu revealed a troubled expression. Only Bai Yu and a few other higher-ups knew about Bai Xiaoli's current state. It was extremely unstable. If they entered rashly, it might cause unnecessary trouble. Moreover, after many years of recuperation, Bai Xiaoli's strength had reached an unfathomable level. If Bai Xiaoli hadn't opened the secret grounds restriction at the critical moment and suppressed herself within, the entire 10-square world might have fallen into eternal damnation. Lin Yu saw the troubled look on Bai Yu's face. "Don't worry, I won't be rash," Lin Yu said slowly. Bai Yu was in a dilemma, but when she saw Lin Yu's confident expression, she made up her mind and said, "All right, I'll take you there." Bai Yu recalled Lin Yu's calm demeanor when they were at the burial ground all those years ago. From that time, Bai Yu knew that Lin Yu wasn't a rash person. On the contrary, Lin Yu was meticulous and watertight. He was strong and confident. It was this trait that had deeply attracted Bai Yu. However, she knew that it was impossible for them to be together. Although she still had feelings for him, she was able to suppress them. The 3 palace masters were now in seclusion. Therefore, Bai Yu didn't report it. Bai Yu had now inherited the position of the sacred lord of the 10-square world. Even if the 3 palace masters appeared, they wouldn't be able to affect Bai Yu's decisions. This was the unwritten rule of the 10-square world. Since ancient times, no one had ever broken it. The 3 of them walked along a spacious path made of bluestone. After walking for more than 10 li, they arrived at a place where the immortal mist was thicker. There was a white radiance in front of him, and there were Tao laws spreading out from it. It was none other than the restrictive formation that Bai Xiaoli had left behind before something happened to her. In this secret place there were countless mountains and forests. Between the rugged rocks, there were countless lush plants growing. It exuded the aura of time, and it was unknown how long it had existed. So, this was a secret place. Its area was boundlessly vast, and it was more appropriate to call it a small world. Lin Yu gazed into the distance, observing the scene inside. However, everything seemed to have been concealed by a powerful aura. Regardless of whether it was his divine sense or his gaze, it was difficult for him to see through it. Lin Yu's first ancient character lit up. Bai Yu and Qing Feng, who stood to one side, suddenly felt a strange pressure. It was a supreme force that almost made them kneel on the ground, unable to endure it any longer. Their gazes changed and they looked at Lin Yu. At this moment, Lin Yu stood tall and straight outside the secret place. His body began to emit a golden mystic energy. This energy was simple and ancient, and it was extremely mysterious. Even now, Bai Yu and Qing Feng felt pain in their divine consciousness when they looked at it, and cracks appeared. However, Lin Yu quickly withdrew this aura, in case Bai Yu and Qing Feng encountered any major problems. Lin Yu's first ancient character's power, and with the support of the second ancient character, began to deduce what happened to Bai Xiaoli. As the light in this place became more and more intense, Lin Yu was like a primordial sun. His figure gradually became hazy and unpredictable. There were tens of thousands of Tao laws smelted into one, and the power of time and space evolved within it. At this moment, Bai Yu and Qing Feng stared at Lin Yu's position. In their shocked gazes, they seemed to see their future. A middle-aged beauty with a mature charm stood in the main hall of the 10-direction world, looking down at the world. A middle-aged man with a long sword on his back stood proudly in the world, This was just a trace of Lin Yu's ancient character's power, and it had already created such a power. Gradually, Bai Yu and Cheng Feng were still looking at the scene in front of them in a daze. Suddenly, the entire Saint Island shook. Above Lin Yu's head, a shadow of a fox the size of a primeval star suddenly appeared. Its 9 fox tails contained great power. At the same time, it also had a sense of mystery. One could see that Lin Yu's figure, who was constantly deducing, was slowly disintegrating. Finally, at a certain moment, it completely exploded. With Lin Yu's current realm, it was difficult for him to deduce by Xiaoli. Under the forced deduction, Lin Yu's body exploded and he died. The blood mist dissipated in an instant. It happened in an instant, but this situation was irreversible. Divine King Lin! Uncle Master Lin! Bai Yu and Cheng Feng were shocked. Bai Yu rushed out, wanting to stop Lin Yu's death. Fortunately, the power of the Divine King's order was released in advance, and Lin Yu's life was saved. I'm fine. Lin Yu calmly stopped the two from going forward. There was still that terrifying mysterious power here. With their current realm, if they went forward rashly, they might not even have a corpse left. Even the traces of their existence might be erased because of this. The two of them would be completely erased from the world, and not a trace of them would be left. Lin Yu, who had recovered to his peak, silently stared at the secret place. At this moment, his eyes seemed to be able to see a corner of the scene with the help of the origin ancient character. At that moment, Bai Xiaoli's entire body was surrounded by a gray substance. Even her pupils had turned scarlet. Lin Yu sighed softly. He originally wanted to find Bai Xiaoli to clear his doubts. However, when he came here, he did not expect that Bai Xiaoli was also in trouble. So, the 12 universes and the 10 holy lands have already been invaded by the eerie beings? Lin Yu looked at the changes on Bai Xiaoli's body in the secret place. Lin Yu had come into contact with the eerie beings many times. When he was on Earth, he had also solved the hidden danger there. Therefore, he was very sensitive to the eerie beings, especially the clay jar in his sea of consciousness. After sensing the changes in the secret place, it began to vibrate slightly. Lin Yu could now be sure that Bai Xiaoli, who was in the secret place, was affected by the eerie beings when she was weak. However, this also made Lin Yu slightly surprised. It was only after reaching his current level of cultivation that he realized how powerful the Bai Xiaoli he had encountered in the past was. Even if he was in the original God realm, he could not estimate Bai Xiaoli's specific realm. Even a living being like him would be affected by the eerie beings. It was hard to imagine how difficult it was to guess the origin of the eerie beings. Thinking of this, Lin Yu gradually became serious. This eerie beings was inextricably linked to the final black calamity. It had already caused many utmost beings to fall in an unknown era. One could imagine, if the true black calamity were to arrive now, who could resist it? Lin Yu thought of the 10 great demon kings. There was still a long time before Lin Yu promised to save them. However, was this period of time really enough? Sensing the changes in the world, Lin Yu had no idea. However, the most important thing now was to solve the hidden danger in Bai Xiaoli's body. If Bai Xiaoli was completely contaminated by the eerie beings, then the 12 universes and the 10 holy lands would have one less utmost being. At that time, in the final black calamity, the entire universe and the holy lands would be in a very difficult situation. Chapter 1242. Lin Yu looked at the situation inside and frowned slightly. After a few hours, Lin Yu finally decided to enter the secret place. The aura on Yuta's body gradually grew stronger. In the end, he used the power of the 2 ancient characters he had mastered, the King of God's badge, and the clay jar to suppress his body. He forcefully stopped his cultivation at the original God realm. An unparalleled power was erupting. Lin Yu looked at the secret place with a calm expression. Bai Yu looked at the aura emitted from Lin Yu's body. She wanted to stop him, but the words stopped at the tip of her tongue. She did not continue. At this moment, she could no longer see through Lin Yu's realm. It was like a great universe with an unparalleled aura. It was filled with a domineering aura. At the same time, Lin Yu's figure seemed extremely ethereal for a moment. It was as if he had left the mortal world. The restriction of the secret place could no longer stop Lin Yu's figure. He took a step forward and entered the secret place. Lin Yu took a step of 1,000 feet and disappeared on the spot. He arrived at the depths of the secret place. At that moment, Bai Xiaoli had revealed her true form. The gigantic shadow of the nine-tailed celestial fox could almost crush a great cosmos. One could see that the primordial stars were like dust beside her, insignificant and unremarkable. Lin Yu's figure was as small as a speck of dust. Under Bai Xiaoli's true form, he was almost invisible. Lin Yu did not relax in the slightest. He was facing the supreme being of the world in the past. Now that he was under the attack of the strange substance, Lin Yu did not dare to be careless. A few ancient characters appeared in front of Lin Yu. They revolved around him and arranged themselves in a special pattern. They formed a formation similar to that of an ancient and vicissitude. They surrounded Lin Yu. At this moment, Lin Yu was like a god born from heaven and earth. He was not to be blasphemed. The environment here had become dark. There was not a trace of light between heaven and earth. All of it was devoured by the strange substance and turned into nourishment. Bai Xiaoli, who was in front of him, had countless divine gold chains on her body. They turned into order and trapped her. His eyes were scarlet red, filled with bloodthirst and madness. When she saw Lin Yu, the divine gold chains rattled. Bai Xiaoli was on the verge of snapping all the chains in this place. Fortunately, the chains had the power of order. It was Bai Xiaoli who had predicted something and had deliberately tied him up. Otherwise, when the time comes, the entire 10-square world will be plunged into a catastrophe. Lin Yu, Bai Xiaoli opened her ferocious mouth, and her eyes regained a trace of clarity. She recognized Lin Yu. Go, but soon, after Bai Xiaoli told Lin Yu to leave quickly, she fell into a trance again. The air she exhaled caused endless cracks to appear in the secret place. The void was also being destroyed inch by inch. Lin Yu shook his head. He would not leave Bai Xiaoli alone. Now, he had mastered the ancient word and the clay jar. At the same time, standing in the original God realm, he could remove the strange substance here. But Bai Xiaoli did not know these. He knew that his condition was very wrong. Now, he could only rely on himself, because with his realm, there was no one in this world who could be on par with him. Now, he was facing a big problem. His body was invaded by the strange substance. Even he did not have the confidence to completely remove it. "I'm here to help you," Lin Yu said slowly. He looked at Bai Xiaoli's painful appearance. Only now did he realize how powerful the 10 great monster kings were. This world was being destroyed inch by inch because of his continuous struggle. The place where Bai Xiaoli stood had turned into nothingness. There was no sign of life. Under the contamination of the strange substance, he seemed to be no longer a living creature. There was coldness and a greed that devoured everything. "What right do you have to help me?" Bai Xiaoli's rationality had been completely devoured. His eyes were cold as he looked down at Lin Yu. There was disdain in his eyes. Lin Yu was unaffected by Bai Xiaoli's ridicule, who had lost her mind. The ancient word on his body began to emit a blazing light. Now that he was standing in the original God realm and had mastered 2 ancient words, his use of the origin ancient word was naturally different. The 9 ancient words were being reconstructed. All of a sudden, a dazzling radiance erupted from the endless darkness. The 9 ancient words were connected. Although Lin Yu did not master the rest. But with the 2 ancient words as a guide, Lin Yu could imprint it in the void. The divine gold chains clanked. Bai Xiaoli roared into the sky. The strange substance in his body seemed to recognize the power that Lin Yu had mastered. At this moment, it finally revealed its fear. It's the origin ancient word. Bai Xiaoli roared. Under the illumination of the light, Bai Xiaoli's consciousness became clear again. Kid, not bad. I didn't expect you to master this power. Use your full strength to help me eliminate the strange substance here. Bai Xiaoli said. The clarity only lasted for a moment. But for Bai Xiaoli and Linyu, it was enough. Linyu took out the clay jar. The 9 ancient words were guided to the body of the clay jar. The two began to merge, emitting a power that did not belong to this world. Outside the secret ground, one could clearly feel this aura. Bai Yu and Bai Xiaoli looked at the ancient golden light that appeared in the endless black fog. This power was simply too unparalleled. The two of them could not help but tremble. It was as if they were standing on the earth at the beginning of heaven and earth, witnessing the two supreme auras merging and cleansing everything. Divine King Lin's current power, Bai Yu, who was already a divine lord, could not help but cover her mouth and exclaim, "Unfathomable!" Qing Feng only silently spat out 2 words. At the same time, Bai Yu was overjoyed, because in this way, her ancestor could be saved. Under the support of the clay jar, the ancient golden light became even sharper, penetrating through time and space. It was as if the river of time had stopped here. Therefore, Bai Yu and Bai Xiaoli were affected by the aura here and showed signs of aging. It was almost irreversible. The two of them had no choice but to retreat. At the same time, they began to evacuate the disciples on the Holy Island. Now, the 3 palace lords were also in seclusion and felt the fluctuations here. They all came out of the Holy Island. Xiao Yu, what happened? The 3 palace lords had been in seclusion since Bai Xiaoli's teachings and the return of the 2nd palace lord. Although they knew about the problem with their ancestor, they could not do anything after seeing it, and Bai Xiaoli said that she was fine. Therefore, they only came out of seclusion after sensing the huge commotion. The fluctuations here were getting more and more intense. Almost the entire Holy Island was about to be destroyed because of this. Divine King Lin arrived not long ago and is now solving the problem with our ancestor. Bai Yu answered truthfully. Divine King Lin? Lin Yu? Ever since Ancestor Lu left, the 2nd palace lord's eyes had been gloomy. Now that he heard Lin Yu's name, he could not help but fall into memories. However, when the 3 of them sensed the aura inside, they were extremely shocked. It's not the aura of the ancestor realm. Lin Yu broke through again. The former palace lord's red lips opened, and she was stunned on the spot. The 3 of them had only reached half-step ancestor realm after receiving Bai Xiaoli's supreme cultivation technique. And now, Lin Yu had reached a level that they could not reach in their lifetime. This was really shocking. But this is someone that our ancestor thinks highly of. Although it is unheard of for him to have such achievements, it is reasonable. The 3rd palace lord said. The 3 of them together used all their strength to activate the formation here and stabilize the Holy Island. As the aura inside became more and more terrifying, just stabilizing the array formation was no longer possible for the few of them. Most of the Saint Island was cracking apart. Fortunately, Bai Yu had taken precautions and evacuated the disciples of the Heavenly Island in advance. Chapter 1243. Lin Yu stood below Bai Xiaoli's figure. His face was calm and indifferent. It wasn't his first time seeing the strange substance. Now, he had his own experience in dealing with it. The strange substance in Bai Xiaoli's body was gradually being stripped away. A pitch-black figure with Bai Xiaoli's shadow began to appear in front of Bai Xiaoli. At this moment, Bai Xiaoli was completely awake. He looked at the strange substance that was being suppressed by the clay pot and the ancient word. His eyes were cold as he said, "Invading me when I'm weak." Bai Xiaoli hadn't recovered to her peak, but she had the strength of the late original God realm. At the same time, he had supreme means. Now, the strange substance was being suppressed by the clay pot. Lin Yu stretched out his right hand. A mysterious power surged on it. The power on the clay pot became more intense. The strange substance that had turned into Bai Xiaoli's shadow began to roar. Black smoke began to rise from its body, and it was evaporating. The strange substance attached to Bai Xiaoli's body. Now it had a part of its strength. At this moment, the black light it emitted could resist the power of the clay pot for a short time. But now that Bai Xiaoli had awakened, the strange substance couldn't cause any trouble. The aura on your body didn't only destroy my clansmen. At this moment, the strange substance actually spoke. At the same time, it revealed a shocking fact. The strange substance was also a living thing. Lin Yu looked at the strange substance with a cold aura and said indifferently, "I don't know where you came from. You can only die if you threaten me." The power on Lin Yu's palm grew stronger. He didn't expect to get any useful information from the strange substance. At this point, Lin Yu had long since become the sworn enemy of the strange matter race. As for the other things, it didn't matter. As long as he was strong enough, he could destroy any threat. After Bai Xiaoli woke up, she attacked. Her 9 fox tails emitted a terrifying power. It seemed like 9 divine kingdoms were contained in them. One could see billions of living beings prostrating themselves in worship, calling out Bai Xiaoli's name. "A trillion divine kingdoms," Bai Xiaoli said casually. This was a terrifying divine ability that involved the origin of the Tao. All of the living beings within were the condensation of Tao laws. Following Bai Xiaoli's words, their divine souls left their bodies and converged in the outside world to form a huge millstone. A rain of light poured down. It enveloped the strange substance. "No!" The strange substance howled in pain. It was suppressed under the millstone and was constantly being destroyed. Even though it had been attached to Bai Xiaoli's body for countless years, it still stood no chance against Bai Xiaoli's ultimate attack. A few hours later, the strange substance had been completely obliterated by Bai Xiaoli and the clay pot's power. Lin Yu and Bai Xiaoli walked out of the secret ground. The 3 palace masters, Bai Yu, and the others had already arrived on the Saint Island. Bai Xiaoli's body had returned to its normal size. His body exuded a supreme pressure. Even though his cultivation base had not fully recovered and was still in the original God realm, there was no one in this world who could threaten him. Your current state doesn't seem to be the true breakthrough to the original God realm. In the main hall, Bai Xiaoli could tell Lin Yu's current state at a glance. Indeed. Lin Yu nodded and continued, "This time, I'm here to verify with you whether this state is good or bad. Your current state is called the Divine Prohibition. It can allow an ancestor realm cultivator to stand in the original God realm. However, sometimes the realm will fall back." Bai Xiaoli had lived for countless years and said a name that none of them knew. Naturally, it can also be called a realm. Bai Xiaoli continued, "To be able to stand in this realm, it's enough to show that your talent is unparalleled. In the era that I mentioned, there were not many living beings who could stand in this realm. However, without exception, all of them eventually grew up to be supreme." Bai Xiaoli was lying on her side on the saint throne lazily. She was answering Lin Yu's questions. At this point, the 3 palace masters, Bai Yu and the others below were all incomparably shocked. Although they did not know about the divine restriction realm from Bai Xiaoli's tone, they could tell how terrifying Lin Yu's future achievements would be. His future was definitely limitless. He might even surpass the original God realm and reach the supreme realm. Through Bai Xiaoli's explanation, the upper echelons of the 10-square world already knew that the Black Calamity was approaching. When that time came, Lin Yu would definitely be a peerless figure standing in front of all living beings. They looked at Lin Yu with a solemn expression. The people of the 10-square world didn't have a deep relationship with Lin Yu. However, through Bai Xiaoli's relationship, they were incomparably respectful towards Lin Yu. Lin Yu heard Bai Xiaoli's words, but his emotions didn't change. When he got the clay jar, he had once witnessed a corner of the truth on earth. At that time, the utmost being had already fallen in the black calamity. To Lin Yu, being an utmost being wasn't enough. Perhaps when he reached that level, he would be able to protect his own universe. However, if he wanted to suppress the black calamity, he was still far from it. Bai Xiaoli looked at Lin Yu with a solemn expression. Seems like when you got the clay jar, you had already seen some ancient history. Bai Xiaoli said slowly, have you seen that utmost being? Everyone was confused by Bai Xiaoli's question. Only Lin Yu knew who she was talking about. Yes, but it was just a remnant consciousness. Lin Yu recalled the time when he was in the world of the clay jar on Earth's immortal island. It was because of that remnant consciousness that almost caused his death. Later on, through the understanding of the strange substance, he seemed to have an inextricable connection with that utmost being. Has he fallen as well? Hearing Lin Yu's reply, Bai Xiaoli's eyes revealed a trace of pity. She looked at Lin Yu with a weird expression. You are very similar to him, Bai Xiaoli said indifferently. However, Lin Yu knew that he wasn't the reincarnation of that utmost being. Otherwise, he might have already awakened at that time. However, he couldn't help but feel a little puzzled when he heard people who knew about that period of history mention that utmost being in front of him. Does that utmost being have anything to do with me? Lin Yu asked. At this point, Bai Xiaoli shook her head gently. She didn't tell Lin Yu the truth. Sighing, she said, we have an agreement. When the time is right, I will tell you. However, there is one thing I can let you know. Your God King's badge was created by him. Bai Xiaoli revealed the origin of the God King's badge. Chapter 1244. Lin Yu wasn't too surprised by this. In the world of the jar, he had already guessed that the King of God's badge was inextricably linked to that supreme being. However, Lin Yu hadn't expected that the King of God's badge was created by that supreme being. It was no wonder that the King of God's badge was ineffective in the world of the jar when faced with the remnant consciousness of that being. Then, why did the system that he carried after transmigrating to the 12 universes, which was the King of God's badge, appear in the hands of the old King of Gods? Could it be that the King of God's badge had always been passed down in the 12 universes? Or was this karma? Lin Yu kept guessing in his heart. However, so much time had passed, and his system had always been assisting and didn't have any negative effects on him. Lin Yu didn't want to guess too much. Bai Xiaoli said that when the time was right, he would naturally understand everything. How long will the divine restriction last? Lin Yu asked the question that he wanted to know at the moment. After all, this was related to the battle between the 12 universes and the second universe. If his divine restriction disappeared in a short period of time, it would be a disaster for the 12 universes. I'm not sure, but it won't disappear in a short period of time. Bai Xiaoli said, it might last for 100 years, or even tens of thousands of years. It's all possible. Lin Yu nodded after hearing Bai Xiaoli's explanation. Since it wouldn't disappear in a short period of time, it was enough. If the divine restriction disappeared, his true realm would only be the late-stage ancestor realm. Every realm was separated by a natural chasm. Especially between the ancestor realm and the original God realm, the gap between them was incomparably huge. In terms of the mastery of the world's Tao law or power, the difference was like heaven and earth. Although Lin Yu was at the flawless ancestor realm, after mastering the power of the original God realm, he knew how big the gap was between the original God realm and the ancestor realm. It was no longer a gap that could be made up for by any means. Although he had mastered a great ability, which could superimpose time and space with the King of God's badge, and had 100 times the power. However, to an ordinary original God realm warrior, he was just an ant. Without any suspense, he would be killed easily. Lin Yu could use the power of the ancient characters to subdue his body. He could stop his realm at the original God realm for a long time. Because he had mastered the ancient word, he could control the divine prohibition domain on his own. In other words, he could maintain his original god realm for a long time in a big battle. Bai Xiaoli vaguely guessed something. At this moment, she looked at Lin Yu and slowly asked, "Did something happen when you asked about the time of the divine forbidden realm?" "In a few days, the 12 universes will go to war with the second universe," Lin Yu said to Bai Xiaoli. He didn't show the slightest bit of fear. This was the second universe's provocation. Lin Xiu was seriously injured when the people of his 12 universes were slaughtered. Lin Yu wasn't the type to swallow his anger. Since they had taken the initiative to provoke him, Lin Yu had nothing to fear. Lin Yu's tone was indifferent. Facing the powerful second universe, he wasn't worried at all. At his realm, as long as he killed the ancient gods of the second universe, everything would be solved. Have the original god realm warriors of the various universes awakened one after another? Bai Xiaoli frowned. In the past, there were figures of the other universes in the 10 sacred land. He naturally knew that in some universes, there were still such experts, but they had been in hibernation. Now that they had awakened, it meant that the Black Calamity was really approaching. Bai Xiaoli didn't care much about these former ancient gods. An expert of her level would only care about the Black Calamity. After all, this was an important matter that would affect the overall situation. "The ancient gods have awakened," Lin Yu replied. Bai Xiaoli had already guessed this after hearing about Lin Yu's war. Otherwise, Lin Yu, who was at the late-stage ancestor realm, wouldn't care if he could stay in the divine prohibition domain. Back then, the second universe was relatively strong. Was there only one ancient god? Bai Xiaoli frowned. She had a close relationship with Lin Yu. Lin Yu had helped her many times, so she naturally wouldn't leave him alone. As long as I can stay in the divine prohibition domain, there won't be much of a problem. Lin Yu was confident. During his time in the primordial continent, he had already mastered the Tao of the original god. In addition, he was at the flawless ancestor realm and had laid a solid foundation. Those ancient gods had fallen into hibernation because of their own problems. Lin Yu was at the peak of the original god realm. He didn't fear anyone. Those who can reach the original god realm are not simple. Bai Xiaoli said, "Now that I'm awake, I'll go with you." If it was before, Bai Xiaoli would naturally disdain to attack these ancient gods. To him, they were just little dolls. However, thinking about Lin Yu's situation, Bai Xiaoli just treated it as a casual attack to recover her cultivation. Lin Yu didn't refuse. Just in case. After all, there were many universes eyeing the 12 universes covetously. Another reason why Lin Yu declared war on the second universe was to intimidate the other universes. Only in this way could the 12 universes have enough time to develop and recuperate. Although Lin Yu knew that after he became a divine king, there had been several battles. The living beings in the 12 universes were already tired. Facing the provocation of the other universes, he had to take action. This was Lin Yu's character, and also a way to rule. Lin Yu stayed in the 10-square world for a day. Then, Bai Xiaoli returned to Lin Yu's Sea of Consciousness and returned to the 12 universes together. The great sun-boundless Buddha and the others were very happy with Bai Xiaoli's help. However, this was only known to the upper echelons. Their purpose was to guard against the second universe's tricks. The day of the great battle was approaching. The 12 universes were now an iron bucket. Now, outside Heaven City, countless warships had gathered. The cultivators among them were all excited. The Dark Priest, Lin Yuan, Sea God Dragon, and the others were personally leading the team. The entire 12 universes were divided into several small teams. Even the great solar boundless Buddha Lord was prepared to head to Universe 10 for an earth-shattering battle. The war between the 12 universes and the second universe. The other universes had already heard about it. Now, there were powerhouses who had already reached the 10th universe and lay dormant in order to witness the true strength of the two universes. Some people had already made an assertion after seeing the ancient gods of the second universe. The 12 universes were just an egg striking a stone. They all knew what a powerhouse of the original God realm represented. At the same time, some people in the universes knew that there seemed to be more than one powerhouse of the original God realm in the second universe. This terrifying strength. In their eyes, the 12 universes, which had always been weak, were just seeking their own deaths by forcing a war. Almost all the universes didn't have much hope for the 12 universes. Now, the ancient gods in the various universes had awakened. They had thoughts about the 10th universe and the 12 universes. Even the 3rd universe had formed an alliance with the 2nd universe. Chapter 1245. The aura of the 10th universe was oppressive. Even the few natives here had holed up in a secret place and didn't dare to come out. In the 10th universe there was an ancient battlefield. There wasn't the slightest trace of life in it. The only thing there was endless silence. Now, the forces of the 2nd and 3rd universes had appeared here. They were waiting for the arrival of the 12 universes. The ancient god of the 2nd universe had disdain in his eyes. The addition of the 3rd universe meant that he could only share the benefits of the 2nd universe. This was what the ancient god of the 2nd universe wasn't satisfied with. However, from the strength that Lin Yu had shown in the decree, he knew that he was definitely in the original god realm, even if it wasn't very stable. However, the current him was already injured. Even though he had awakened now, his strength had already waned somewhat. He didn't have absolute confidence that he could defeat Lin Yu. The ancient god of the 2nd universe was called Yu Hua. At this moment, his junior brother, Yu Kuan, spoke slowly. Senior brother, could it be that the god kings of the 12 universes are afraid? It doesn't matter. If that's the case, let's kill our way into the 12 universes, Yu Hua said unhurriedly. At this moment, the ancient god of the 3rd universe, an old man with only a few sparse white hairs on his head, said with a smile, I didn't expect that Taoist Yu and his junior brother would come out of seclusion for this matter. When he saw Yu Kuan, there was a trace of astonishment in his eyes. Now, there were 3 ancient gods overseeing them. The god kings of the 2 universes could only stand quietly behind them with respect. After a few hours, the battlefield was still deathly silent, except for the living beings of the 2 universes. In that case, let's go. We will personally go to the 12 universes to fight. Yu Hua stood up. His eyes penetrated the void and reached an eternal unknown place. The 2 god kings behind him began to gather the forces that had come to fight and began to build the space gate. And at this moment, a majestic space gate appeared in the sky above the battlefield. It overflowed with terrifying space power. It caused the void to begin to tear. One could see densely packed figures beginning to appear from within. Countless warships were suspended in the sky. Fight! Fight! His majestic voice reverberated throughout the battlefield. The living beings of the 12 universes let out shocking noises. The horns of war sounded. The entire battlefield was shaking violently. Lin Yu stood in front of everyone in the 12 universes. His eyes were indifferent, but the aura on his body made everyone raise their eyebrows. When facing Lin Yu, it was as if he was looking directly at the vast expanse of heaven, giving off an unfathomable feeling. The 12 universes have come to purge the provocateurs, Lin Yu said softly. However, it already contained the power of Tao laws, resonating with the heavens and earth, clearly transmitting into everyone's ears. Purge the provocateurs. Qin Wunyan and the others were the first to speak. The combat troops of the 12 universes unleashed their fighting spirit. The combined sound was deafening, like the explosion of chaos divine thunder. Very good. Yu Hua appeared in front of the 12 universes. He brought the godly kings of the universes with him. There was no trace of fear on his face. You've exceeded my expectations. Yu Hua opened his mouth, staring at Lin Yu, who was as calm as an ancient well. I'm also surprised that the ancient gods of the 2nd universe didn't turn into the dust of history. Lin Yu didn't fear Yu Hua, who had stood in the original God realm for many years. The temperament of a godly king of a universe was fully displayed. Even the godly monarchs of Universe 2 and Universe 3 couldn't help but be moved when they saw Lin Yu. Before this, he had already killed the godly king of the second universe. The current godly king of the second universe was just a temporary position. He didn't know what had happened in the first universe. However, according to the news, Lin Yu was only at the early ancestor realm at that time. Now, only a few years had passed, and he had already stood in the original God realm. He could compete with the ancient gods of many eras in terms of aura. He wasn't weaker than them at all. "You're very arrogant." The ancient god of the third universe narrowed his eyes. His cold eyes turned into substance as he attacked Lin Yu. His spirit, chi, and soul, which had almost decayed, condensed into an attack. Lin Yu snorted coldly. His eyes became incomparably deep. His two eyes were like immortal swords. Boom! Under the protection of the ancient god, the godly kings of the two universes were forced to retreat continuously. They coughed up blood. Their eyes met, and the void exploded inch by inch. There were irreparable marks like a spider web covering the sky above the battlefield. The old man's eyes were shattered. He retreated half a step. Although this was just a test and it wasn't a big deal, it was hard for an ancient god who had been invincible for many eras to accept. Facing Lin Yu's power, the ancient god of the third universe exclaimed in surprise. He hadn't used his full strength. Of course, Lin Yu hadn't used his full strength either. However, in this short confrontation, he had fallen into a disadvantageous position. It should be known that the old man was facing an expert who had just entered the original God realm. As he specialized in soul consciousness, his strength was self-evident. However, Lin Yu was fine. He even launched a counterattack. It was very hard for him to understand. "I didn't expect your soul consciousness to be so strong," the ancient god of the third universe said coldly. At the same time, killing intent emerged in his heart. Lin Yu couldn't be left alive. From the mouth of the godly kings of the third universe, he knew that Lin Yu's growth speed was too frightening. In just 1,000 years, he had reached the original God realm from the early ancestor realm. Since ancient times, it had never appeared before. Lin Yu just stood there indifferently. He didn't say anything. The ancient god of the third universe was good at soul consciousness attacks. However, Shi Yan's soul consciousness had the support of the ancient characters and the pottery jar. It had reached an immortal and indestructible level. The strength of his soul consciousness wasn't weaker than the middle original God realm. Lin Yu didn't use his full strength this time. Otherwise, just this one attack could have seriously injured the ancient god of the third universe. There were people from other universes below. They used special methods to hide their auras. There were many ancestor realm experts among them. He looked at Lin Yu. He wasn't afraid of the ancient god of the third universe. Even in the first confrontation, he vaguely had the upper hand. He couldn't help but be frightened. The strongest expert of the new era. This was what the ancestor realm expert of the fifth universe had said. He looked at Lin Yu's position and whispered. Lin Yu's current strength was enough to fight against creatures who had become supreme experts many eras ago. This kind of growth speed was terrifying to the extreme. No wonder the 12 universes dared to declare war on the second universe. Turns out that their god kings have reached the original god realm. At this moment, someone noticed Lin Yu's position. His terrifying aura had shaken everyone. It's so sad and regretful. The most outstanding genius of the new era has reached the original god realm in such a short time. But facing the 3 original God realm experts who have been stagnating for a long time, what can he do? Someone sighed. Lin Yu could be considered the first and the only one who had broken through to the original God realm in the new era. However, if he had been patient for a while, Even if all the ancient gods had been revived, they wouldn't have been able to threaten him. But now, he had to take action forcefully. Facing the 3 original God Realm experts who had been stagnating for many years, he had no chance of winning. This was what everyone thought. However, at this moment, the arrow was already knocked on the bowstring. They didn't have time to think. They seemed to see the scene of Lin Yu being killed by the 3 original God Realm experts. Chapter 1246. All the experts hiding in the battlefield didn't have any hope for Lin Yu's 12 universes. Even though you've reached the original God Realm, you're still just an ant in front of our ancestors, the God Kings of the Second Universe and the Third Universe said at the same time with a mocking tone. They looked at Lin Yu's forces in the 12 universes. They didn't show any mercy. If you surrender now, maybe we can consider sparing the people of your 12 universes. As for you, you can die peacefully, the God King of the Second Universe continued. Lin Yu just glanced at the God King of the Second Universe. The terrifying pressure was like a great cosmos pressing down on them. Even the 3 ancient gods didn't have time to react. When they wanted to stop Lin Yu's soul consciousness, the God King of the Second Universe began to crack. The God King of the Second Universe began to crack. The vitality in his body began to fade rapidly. This trend was irreversible. The soul consciousness supported by the pottery jar and the origin ancient characters was extremely powerful. The God King of the Second Universe couldn't even struggle and died directly. No matter what method he used, it was hard to save him. He died completely. What's that? Lin Yu said coldly. The God King of the Third Universe was frightened, and a chill ran down his spine. Lin Yu's method was too swift and fierce. He didn't have time to react. Yu Hua and Yu Kuan, facing the God King of their own universes, were killed by Lin Yu again. Their eyes became cold and gloomy. How dare you? Yu Kuan shouted coldly. Lin Yu didn't care about Yu Kuan's shout. At this time, he attacked again and easily killed the God King of the Third Universe. Now, the God King of the Third Universe was on guard. However, Lin Yu's soul consciousness was like an immortal sword. It appeared directly and broke all his defensive method. The God Kings of the 2 universes fell just like that. This scene caused everyone to tremble in fear. The God King of the 12 universes is so strong. The experts hiding in the dark felt their mouths and tongues dry. This was a slap to the ancient god's face. He had killed his own junior in front of them. Today you won't be able to live, said Yu Hua. Together with the 12 universes, you will be buried and reduced to the dust of history. An ancestor realm powerhouse was a rare fighting force for a universe. It would take countless years for one to be born. However, in the second universe, 3 ancestor realm powerhouses had already been killed by Lin Yu. This was a huge loss. If the second universe didn't have 2 original God Realm experts, the second universe would have started to decline. There's no point in talking anymore. Today I'll kill all of you. Lin Yu replied casually. Right after that, he covered the 3 original God Realm experts. Lin Yu's aura became incomparably vast. He took the 3 original God Realm experts to the foreign battlefield. This place was almost outside the universe. Only in this place, the battle between the original God Realm experts wouldn't affect the entire universe. After all these years of development, Lin Yu had also used the power of the ancient characters. Now, the top fighting force in the 12 universes was no weaker than any other universe. Moreover, he had the technique passed down by Bai Xiaoli. At this time, Qin Wunyan had the fighting force to control the 12 universes. The fighting spirit of the cultivators below began to gather towards him. Vaguely, he already had the fighting strength of an ancestor realm expert. This was a kind of divine rune that could gather the fighting spirit of all living beings into one, increasing one's fighting strength. There was no doubt that the 12 universes were now extremely prosperous. In addition to Lin Zhanyu and the great sun boundless Buddha, the 12 universes already had the fighting strength of 3 ancestor realm experts. For a universe, this was extremely terrifying. Even among the 12 universes were considered the top. At this time, the godly kings of the second and third universes had been killed. There were no more than 4 ancestor realm experts in the 2 universes. At this time, they saw that unparalleled fluctuations had already erupted in the foreign battlefield. Completely wipe out the 12 universes. The ancestor realm expert of the second universe thought of his own godly king, who had been wiped out by Lin Yu twice. The hatred in their hearts could not be any greater. They put their hatred on the living beings of the 12 universes. Then let's see if you have the ability. Lin Zhanyu was in front, his fighting spirit high. Like Lin Yu, he didn't talk too much nonsense. Carrying boundless blood energy, he directly rushed towards the 2 people of the second universe. After many years of cultivation, Lin Zhanyu's strength had become more and more terrifying. Although he had always been in the ancestor realm, the strength of his battle constitution had surpassed that of ordinary living beings. Seeing Lin Zhanyu step forward, the 12 universes, the second and third universes had formed an alliance and all rushed out. The 2 forces quickly fought. The smell of blood soon filled the battlefield. Lin Zhanyu and the 2 ancestor realm experts were in a fight. The power of his battle constitution tore through the void. All divine abilities were useless in front of him. A divine ring appeared behind him, which was the manifestation of the extreme realm of strength. One force to break 10,000 techniques. Lin Zhanyu was now in an unstoppable state, beating an ancestor realm expert until he coughed up blood. In the extraterritorial battlefield, Lin Yu had also been in a fight with the 3 original God realm experts. I admit that you are amazing enough, but facing the siege of 3 experts of the same level at the same time, you can't survive. Yu Hua opened his mouth. He gathered a supreme divine ability in his hand. Under the 3 people's attacks, Lin Yu gradually showed signs of weakness. Not long after, his white clothes were stained with blood. The scarlet dots were a bit shocking to the eye. It was just that the 3 of them were not very good. Lin Yu's attack was very overbearing, as if he didn't care about his life. He forcibly suppressed the ancient god of the third universe, causing his body to shatter many times. Although the original God realm experts had endless lifespan and were almost in the immortal and indestructible state with powerful vitality, when facing an attack of the same level, their origin would also be injured. Fellow Taoists of the second universe, why are you hiding? Do you want to betray me? The ancient god of the third universe was very sullen. At this moment, he was scolding the 2 ancient gods of the second universe. He had already discovered that the 2 ancient gods of the second universe were watching him being killed, but they didn't intend to help him with their full strength. They seemed to want to see Lin Yu completely obliterate him. Fellow Taoist, don't panic. We are accumulating power, Yu Kuan explained. The ancient gods of the third universe naturally didn't want to hear Yu Kuan's nonsense. This was also something that Lin Yu had seen through. The second universe and the third universe weren't an iron bucket. Although it was called an alliance, the third universe also wanted to get a share of the action. This naturally caused the ancient gods of the second universe to be dissatisfied. Therefore, when Lin Yu attacked the ancient gods of the third universe with his full strength, they didn't reach their full strength. Facing this, the God King of the third universe, who didn't have many hairs on his head, was so angry that he lost 2 of them. He was very embarrassed and looked a little funny. Lin Yu didn't care too much about it. He was fighting with his life on the line and didn't care about what was behind him. Now, he was wholeheartedly focused on killing the ancient gods of the third universe first. At this moment, Yu Hua and Yu Kuan of the second universe gradually revealed a trace of a bad premonition. They had underestimated Lin Yu's fighting strength. At this moment, He had been besieged by the three of them for a long time, yet he still had the strength to take the initiative to attack. Chapter 1247. However, Lin Yu's strength was not really that terrifying. After all, he wasn't a real original God realm expert. Because of the God restriction, he could stay in this domain. His understanding of the original God realm wasn't complete yet. At this moment, the two original God realm experts of the second universe had started to attack Lin Yu with all of their strength. Even though Lin Yu had the support of the three moves of the ancient god, his body was still broken many times. Eventually, he had to reorganize his body. Warriors who could reach the original god realm were the best of the best since ancient times. The gap between them wouldn't be too big. Lin Yu also knew this. At this moment, he had gotten rid of the three's encirclement. Under the power of Yu Hua and Yu Kuan of the second universe, he couldn't pose a big threat to the ancient god of the third universe. "Give up," Yu Kuan said. Golden light filled the sky, turning into endless weapons. Sabers, swords, axes, and axes. They were all-encompassing and endless. They were all the strongest weapons. This was the manifestation of the universal Tao law. At this moment, behind him was the world of the strongest weapons. The mountains, rivers, grasses, and trees were all made of weapons. There was a majestic god mountain in the shape of a gourd. At this moment, it appeared and attacked Lin Yu. "You still don't understand the true meaning of the original god realm," Yu Kuan said. The original god realm could create a world. Experts at this level all had their own inner worlds, which could nurture their strongest technique. Apparently, Lin Yu only had the power of the original god realm, but he didn't have this kind of ability. This was something that Yu Hua and the other two had already noticed during the battle. At this moment, they had performed their strongest techniques, wanting to use this to kill Lin Yu completely. After experiencing this battle, Lin Yu had a different kind of understanding in his heart. He saw the two ancient words he had comprehended revolving around him. "You guys are useless now," Lin Yu said indifferently. But when these words reached the three people's ears, it was like a joke. Yu Kuan couldn't help but laugh. "Brat, you need brains to be arrogant. Do you still not understand the gap between you and us?" Yu Kuan asked. Right now, he was confident that he could kill Lin Yu alone. Lin Yu didn't seem to realize the danger he was in and was still talking nonsense. The three of them couldn't help but sneer. The decline of a universe is precisely because of an arrogant junior like you. You are the sinner of your 12 universes. The ancient god of Universe 3 also opened his inner world. The power of the divine will was vast and majestic. His inner world was a boundless ocean. Occasionally, huge Kuan could be seen rolling up and down. His inner world was constructed by his divine will and a portion of his cultivation base. The moment it appeared, it exerted immense pressure on others. It was as if his spiritual will was being sucked into the third universe's ancient god's inner world as nourishment. This didn't affect Lin Yu much. But when the Kuan rushed out and manifested in the extraterritorial battlefield, its huge body couldn't be seen at a glance. Under its size, the original stars were far inferior. It opened its bloody mouth and tried to swallow Lin Yu. Chi, a huge foxtail appeared, several times larger than the Kuan. Faced with this unforeseen event, the three people's expressions changed. They didn't know what was going on. Until the Kuan let out a scream, in just a short moment, the ancient god's means on the surface universe had been neutralized. "You stall the one from Universe 3 first. Leave him alive." Lin Yu's tone was very indifferent, but in the three people's ears, it sounded so domineering and arrogant. They all sensed that the master of the foxtail was extremely powerful and had definitely surpassed them. "You have a helper?" The three people were shocked. Bai Xiaoli's figure appeared in Lin Yu's sea of consciousness. In the eyes of the three people, her figure was more majestic than the universe. "Okay. Bai Xiaoli's cold voice sounded. He used his divine consciousness to lock onto the ancient god of Universe 3. Above Bai Xiaoli's 9 foxtails, 9 divine kingdoms appeared. These were 9 terrifying worlds, and they contained boundless mighty power. It was far more profound than the inner worlds of ordinary original god realm cultivators. Naturally, its power was incomparably terrifying. The ancient god of Universe 3 felt his scalp go numb. But now, he was enveloped by the aura of Bai Xiaoli's divine kingdom. He couldn't escape even if he wanted to. It could be seen that the ancient god of Universe 3 was trapped in the divine kingdom. There was a primitive creature chanting. The voice turned into divine chains of order, completely suppressing the ancient god of Universe 3. But Bai Xiaoli didn't kill him. Now, she stood aside indifferently, watching Lin Yu attack Yu Hua and Yu Kuan. This was a rare experience for Lin Yu, so Bai Xiaoli didn't attack again. But as long as she stood there, it was a huge pressure for the 2 people of Universe 2. The 2 of them looked at the ancient god of Universe 3 being easily suppressed and couldn't help but feel scared. Who are you? The 2 of them looked at Bai Xiaoli and began to guess. There was only one possibility for a 9-tailed celestial fox to be so powerful. She was one of the 10 great demon kings sealed in the 10 great holy lands. You don't deserve to know my name, Bai Xiaoli said indifferently. Bai Xiaoli used her power again and completely imprisoned the extraterritorial battlefield. Right now, it was basically impossible for Yu Hua and Yu Kuan to escape even if they wanted to. After the 2 of them saw Bai Xiaoli's method, they could basically confirm her identity. Fortunately, Bai Xiaoli didn't have any intention of attacking them. Otherwise, if Bai Xiaoli attacked casually, they wouldn't be able to resist and would only end up dead. If you can defeat me, I'll let you go. Lin Yu's aura blazed again. The power of the God King's order spread out and healed all the wounds on his body. With his God-forbidden domain, he wasn't a match for 3 original God Realm experts. But with 2 people, Lin Yu had enough confidence. When he saw the 3 original God Realm experts use their inner world, Lin Yu had an idea that could let him break through the original God Realm quickly. This was one of the reasons why Lin Yu didn't let Bai Xiaoli kill the original god of Universe 3. Azura's phantom appeared in the 8 great void tribes. After Lin Yu used his inner world, Azura's phantom was as tall as the sky. The aura on his body tore the void. It created a vacuum around him. No matter could get close to him. You're really arrogant, but you have the power of the original God Realm, not the complete original God Realm. What makes you think you can fight the 2 of us? Yu Kuan said. It was just that Yu Hua, who was at the side, frowned slightly. He had realized something. Previously, he had felt Lin Yu's terrifying power. Now that the ancient god of Universe 3 was gone, the 2 of them might have a hard time. Junior brother, be careful. Yu Hua sent a message. His face was solemn. However, Yu Kuan had been looked down upon by Lin Yu again and again. He was angry and rushed out. Countless weapons rushed out from the inner world behind him. The gourd mountain transformed into a living being and engaged in a fierce battle with the Azura's shadow. Chapter 1248. Rolling thunderbolts surrounded them. Heaven and earth were collapsing. Yu Kuan was enraged. His body glowed as he attacked Lin Yu. Perhaps this strength isn't enough, Lin Yu said casually. At this moment, among the 8 tribes of the Great Void, he used the divine power of the Dragon Clan, which he hadn't used for a long time. With the support of the 3 moves of the ancient god, a divine ring made of blood appeared behind Lin Yu. All divine powers were useless in front of it. In addition, Lin Yu could stand in the Tao comprehending realm at any time. Under the abstruse realm, he could see through any of his opponent's moves. In just 3 moves, Lin Yu's claw pierced through Yu Kuan's shoulder. Lin Yu's hand was filled with a domineering aura. The divine power of the Dragon Clan was meant for attacking. Boundless power spread from Yukuan's shoulder to his entire body, directly causing his body to explode. Blood mist scattered. Lin Yu knew that the vitality of an original God Realm expert was very tenacious. If he wasn't completely killed, he would reappear. Lin Yu attacked again, trying to kill Yukuan. However, Yu Hua stepped forward and blocked him. Lin Yu and Yukuan had only exchanged 3 moves. Now Yu Hua had just stepped forward. He was stalling for time for his junior brother to reform his body. Because he knew that Lin Yu now had an invincible aura. They weren't in their peak condition, so they had to deal with him well. Lin Yu didn't retreat even half a step in front of Yu Hua's attack. His hand formed a fist imprint, directly blasting apart the small heaven and earth scene that Yu Hua displayed. The endless lava became powerless under Lin Yu's fist. Lin Yu was bathed in lava. There were still sparks on his body, but they didn't affect him at all. If it's not an ultimate technique, it's no longer a threat to him. Yu Hua was incomparably shocked. They paid attention to the cultivation of their battle physique. But now, facing Lin Yu, he still felt powerless. He kept retreating. After a dozen moves, Yukuan's body condensed once again. Although the original God Realm warriors could revive, it would damage their origin greatly. Yukuan's face was cold as he stepped forward with his senior apprentice brother, Yu Hua, to kill Lin Yu. However, as time passed, Lin Yu fought more and more valiantly. In the end, the Emperor's sword appeared in his hand. A sword slashed across. This caused Yukuan's arm to break once again and fall powerlessly onto the battlefield. It took a long time for it to recover. However, Lin Yu was also not in a good condition. He was also injured in many places. Lin Yu had thoroughly grasped the mysteries of the lesser heaven and earth during the battle. It was also a world. However, it had the principles of the original God Realm warriors, which could create a different kind of world. It relied on some things in the world, but most of it had already transcended. This was also a kind of application of the principles after breaking through the original God Realm. You can go in peace, Lin Yu said slowly, holding the Emperor's sword. The 3 of them were injured. Their origin had been damaged many times. However, it seemed that Lin Yu's injuries were more serious because of his fierce fighting style. The 2 of them were shocked. They were sure that Lin Yu was not really in the original God Realm. However, he could fight the 2 of them without losing. What kind of monster was this? Senior apprentice brother, we don't need to hide anymore. Kill him. Yukuan's eyes were filled with killing intent. After the ancient god of the third universe was suppressed by Lin Yu into the god country, he became Lin Yu's main target. This made him feel very sullen. His battle physique had been destroyed many times. His soul consciousness had almost been destroyed because of this. Yu Hua had no other choice now. He inadvertently looked in by Xiaoli's direction. Now, he could only hope that after killing Lin Yu, Bai Xiaoli would not attack them. How did he get acquainted with the 10 great monster kings? Yu Hua was puzzled. How terrifying were the 10 great monster kings? Even he, who was in the original God Realm, knew how powerful they were from the words in the ancient books. Even Bai Xiaoli's current realm was not something they could see through. Senior apprentice brother, pay attention to this kid first, Yukuan reminded. Their inner worlds began to fuse together. This was his strongest ability. Back then, it was by relying on this ability that the 2 of them were able to survive that cruel battlefield. Under the merging of their inner worlds, they could even fight against a middle original God Realm expert. Lin Yu did not want to waste any more time. The power in his body began to gather towards the sword in his hand. The 100-fold effect of the God King's token appeared. Lin Yu's sword was the pinnacle. Under the condensation of his cultivation, it had already become hazy, surpassing the limits of what this space could bear. Seeing Lin Yu use the God King's token, even Bai Xiaoli could not help but praise. This kid is using that person's God King's token very well. This was Lin Yu's strongest attack. If the Emperor's sword had not been nurtured in the clay jar, the sword would not have been able to withstand this power. The sky was torn apart. It spread to the battlefield below. Some of the weaker cultivators could not withstand this pressure and knelt on the ground. The scene was chaotic. Everyone looked up at the extraterritorial battlefield in the sky in shock. Its boss's aura. Lin Zhanyu was overjoyed, even though he was facing two Ancestor Realm experts and was covered in blood. He held the arm of an Ancestor Realm expert in his hand, dripping with blood, but he was smiling brightly. Lin Zhanyu had always maintained the appearance of a child, as if he had not grown up. After following Lin Yu for so many years, his eyes had only become sharper. Other than that, there were not many changes. God King Lin, suppress all enemies. God King is invincible. At this time, the 12 universes felt Lin Yu's blazing aura and raised their arms to cheer, their fighting spirits soaring. In the battle against the enemy, many people had already fallen. But this aroused the bloodthirst of the creatures in the 12 universes. Looking at Lin Yu's current aura, facing 3 original God Realm experts, they felt that he was still so strong. They were no longer afraid of anything and began to conquer. Provoking our 12 universes, hurting our people, today, no matter who you are, you must die. A veteran, holding a broken spear, sent many enemies flying. However, his chest was also pierced through. When Lin Yu established the Heaven Alliance, he had been under Qin Wunyan. His cultivation base and realm were not high, so he could not resist the erosion of time. Now, he was old beyond recognition. However, his fighting spirit caused everyone to be in awe. In the past, I participated in many battles led by God King Lin. My brothers are all dead. Now, what is there to be afraid of? The veteran's chest was pierced, and he knew that he did not have much time left. He raised his arms and shouted, "To be able to serve the God King, I have no regrets in my life. Later generations, kill for a bright future." After he finished speaking, his body began to glow. He directly stimulated his own cultivation base and pulled a dozen people around him to die together. This was just a small episode in the infinite battlefield, but it was enough to see the bloodthirst of the 12 universes. They had all grown up from blood and bones. Even if they had not grown up due to the passage of time, it was this bloodthirst that made the alliance of the second and third universes tremble in fear. Lin Yu also sensed the movement below. 12 universes, immortal. Lin Yu's indifferent words gave birth to spiritual power, making everyone in the 12 universes who heard it feel refreshed. Now, the people in the alliance of the third and second universes began to be bewildered. He thought of his ancestor and wondered why there was no movement now. Could it be that an accident had happened? This made some experts shudder. They did not dare to continue guessing. Chapter 1249. At this time, Azura's phantom also began to crush the universe's inner world. Lin Yu's space-time superposition had already condensed to its peak state. The long river of time and space appeared in front of him. Lin Yu's figure turned into a sword energy. It seemed to have transcended time and space. In the long river of time, it was difficult to reflect his figure. Boom! The boundary wall of the 10th universe was shattered by the remaining power of Lin Yu's sword energy. Yuhua and Yukuan's heads were covered in cold sweat. The shock in their hearts couldn't be any greater. The fusion of their inner worlds had already reached its peak. There was no other way now. The two of them could only fight. They drove their inner worlds. The lava was scorching hot, tempering a peerless divine weapon. It looked like a sword, yet not a sword, yet not a saber. There were sharp spikes on it, and each spike seemed to bear the weight of a peerless evil spirit. The two of them used all their strength at the same time. They drove the peerless divine weapon and charged toward Lin Yu. Everything happened too quickly. The two collided violently. Endless power was spilling out, but it was all blocked by the restrictions set up by Xiaoli. Even so, the phantoms of Azura and the Gourd, who were the closest, were still scattered. They turned into essence chi and dissipated in space. There was a great collapse of the void here. Everything ceased to exist. The chaos divine lightning was formed and spread throughout the 10th universe. The scene was very terrifying. The Tao laws of the 10th universe had turned into substance at this time, becoming divine chains of order that floated in the entire sky. It predicted the threat and appeared at this time to stabilize the entire universe. Otherwise, it was very likely that under the collision of the two, the 10th universe would be irreversible. Xiaoli looked at this scene, and her eyes bloomed with splendor. Lin Yu's performance had already exceeded her expectations. Rumble! The chaos divine lightning was destroyed in an instant. The sword energy that Lin Yu turned into directly obliterated the inner worlds of the two. Then, with endless sword light, the two of them penetrated. Yuhua and Yukuan couldn't react at all before they were obliterated. Their bodies were reorganizing with great difficulty. Lin Yu dissipated into the void. However, the power of the God King's order continued to emanate. Almost at the same time, Lin Yu's figure returned to his peak form. He did not completely obliterate the two of them. Lin Yu stretched out his right hand, which emitted an endless amount of devouring power. It was none other than the devouring starry sky divine ability. Lin Yu wanted to devour their cultivation as his own nourishment. The two of them had yet to fully condense their bodies, but by now, under Lin Yu's ultimate technique, their origins had already been severely damaged. Now, under Lin Yu's devouring starry sky, it was difficult to resist. "You want to absorb our cultivation?" Yu Hua, who condensed his body with difficulty, was incomparably terrified. He had never seen such a divine ability before. It was too terrifying. He could actually directly absorb the source energy of others and use it for himself. Lin Yu didn't answer him. The aura of the two men gradually weakened. Their power entered Lin Yu's body and was quickly refined and absorbed by him. After several hours, the world returned to its tranquility. Yu Hua and Yukuan no longer existed in this world. They were completely absorbed by Lin Yu. At this moment, Lin Yu was a little surprised because he found a vague light spot in his lower abdomen. It had a mysterious aura. At the same time, it intertwined with his ancient characters and the pottery jar. Is this the inner world they mentioned? Lin Yu looked inside his body. He found that there were worlds of lava, volcanoes, and tools in his weak light spot. I didn't expect that the devouring starry sky could also absorb other people's inner worlds. Lin Yu was a little surprised. However, to Lin Yu it was also a great benefit. At this moment, he had stepped into the original God realm. As long as he stayed in the God prohibition domain for a while, when he broke through, the power of his inner world would surpass many people in the past. However, Lin Yu wasn't satisfied. His speck of light already contained his own Tao laws as well as Yu Hua and Yu Kuan's Tao laws. However, if he wanted to step into the flawless realm, Lin Yu knew that he needed to completely merge their principles into one. He needed to truly master it. After a simple meditation, Lin Yu looked at the ancient god of the third universe. After seeing the two ancient gods of the second universe die tragically, the ancient god of the third universe, who was suppressed in the God Nation, felt a chill down his spine. However, he couldn't even run away now. I think we can talk about the conditions. The ancient god of the third universe braced himself and said, I know a lot of secrets. Moreover, the Black Calamity is coming. As an original God realm expert, I'm very useful. You can't kill me. The ancient god of the third universe tried to put up a strong front. There's still a supreme expert in the third universe. He's in the realm C now. If you kill me, he'll kill you when he knows. The ancient god of the third universe said a shocking fact. In the 12 universes, the original God realm experts weren't the end. There were still supreme experts, who were now on the other side of the realm sea, the land of origin. However, due to some special reasons, they couldn't return. Facing the threat, Lin Yu wasn't scared at all. Tell me what you know. Perhaps I can consider letting you go. However, do you think you can threaten me? Lin Yu said disdainfully. He had never been threatened in his life. Let him out. Lin Yu had the intention to kill. He didn't care what the original God Realm experts could do in the Black Calamity. Lin Yu just wanted to protect his universe. As for the others, he had his own selfish motive. However, for the sake of the overall situation, did he have to swallow the humiliation when the other universes invaded? Apparently, this wasn't Lin Yu's personality. Seeing that Lin Yu really wanted to kill him, the ancient god of the third universe couldn't help but feel a chill down his spine. Lin Yu began to gather his power. The ancient god of the third universe knew that after Lin Yu had absorbed the origin of the two original God Realm experts, he had become more unpredictable. The ancient god knew that he wasn't his opponent. And now, Bai Xiaoli, one of the 10 great monster kings, was guarding him. The ancient god was in a situation where he had to die. He had been dormant for countless years to recuperate. However, not long after he came out, he had to face a life-or-death crisis. He couldn't help but feel regretful. If he didn't want to get a share from the second universe, he wouldn't have ended up like this. Do you know why I want to invade your 12 universes with the second universe? Seeing that Lin Yu was approaching him, the ancient god of the third universe shouted. He immediately cried out. However, Lin Yu seemed to turn a deaf ear to him. His figure was still moving forward. That's because your 12 universes contain endless mysteries. In a battle before ancient history, the first godly king of your 12 universes brought back a mysterious item from the land of origin and left it in your 12 universes. It's said that it can help people reach the highest level. The ancient god of the third universe didn't have the demeanor of an expert at all. Seeing Lin Yu approaching, he was already in a mess. He told her everything he knew. He saw that the aura on Lin Yu's Emperor's sword was incomparably blazing. As for the others, where they are and what they are, I don't know anything about them. The ancient god of the third universe was revealed to the world. He knew that everything was irreversible. Lin Yu had already made up his mind to kill him. When the time comes, the strongest expert of the third universe will kill you. This was the last sentence of the ancient god of the third universe. Then, he was killed by Lin Yu, and his origin was absorbed by the devouring starry sky. Chapter 1250. The battle between the top fighting forces of the 3 universes had come to an end. At this time, Lin Yu closed his eyes and felt the power of the ancient gods of the third universe had appeared in his body. 2 hours later, Lin Yu's figure was reflected on the battlefield below. Everyone knew that this battle had ended with the victory of the 12 universes. Although Lin Yu had sensed all the dormant experts of the other universes, he didn't eliminate them. Lin Yu needed them to go to their universes to report and establish the dignity of the 12 universes. God King is mighty. God King Lin is invincible in the world. The battle lasted for a few months. Lin Yu didn't participate in the battle below. He just eliminated some hidden threat. The 12 universes needed to grow, and the best way was to train in blood and bones. There would be deaths, which was normal. Lin Yu didn't interfere. Because when it really came to a critical moment and Lin Yu wasn't in the 12 universes, then they needed to fight on their own and protect their home. Time passed. Without the original God Realm experts, the alliance of the second and third universes had lost the will to fight. The battle situation was one-sided. In the end, the forces of the third and second universes that came to fight were all wiped out. Some dormant experts of the second and third universes didn't escape Lin Yu's divine consciousness detection. They were completely wiped out by the Great Sun Buddha and the others. At this point, the battle came to an end for the time being. The people of the 12 universes rested and built up strength for a few months. Shocking news came out. Lin Yu announced that he would officially take over the second and third universes. Those who disobeyed would be killed. As soon as this news came out, the faces of the other universes became ugly. One person taking control of 4 universes, this was something that had never happened since ancient times. The resources in a universe were so vast. The 4 universes added together, and it wouldn't take long to create countless experts just by using resources. In this way, the scale of strength would tip. For the other universes, this was a huge threat. However, Lin Yu didn't care about other things. He led the forces of the 12 universes. Currently, the 2 universes didn't have any original God realm experts. Even if there were unyielding resistors among them, it was of no use. After taking over the 2 universes, Lin Yu left the Dark Priest and the others in Universe 2, while the Vairocana Buddha was in charge of Universe 3. After this, the 12 universes would be like the sun at noon, and no one would be able to stop it. This undoubtedly caused the forces of the other universes to become cautious. Convened by the first universe, they were preparing to hold an emergency universe meeting. Their purpose was to target the 12 universes controlled by Lin Yu and the other 3 universes. Lin Yu did not reject this meeting. After arranging other things, he came to the first universe again. Everyone in the hall had ugly expressions on their faces. They had already witnessed Lin Yu's strength during the first meeting. But one person controlling 4 universes was a matter of great importance. This was something they would not allow. Perhaps when the 12 universes Lin Yu was in became stronger, it would be unknown which universe would be conquered. This was a thorn in the hearts of the other universes. After Lin Yu occupied the 10th universe, there were already signs of it. This was a huge earthquake between the universes. They would not allow an imbalance in strength. The people of the other universes had been waiting here for a long time. They had already carried out a secret negotiation. At the same time, they were incomparably shocked by Lin Yu's strength. He could actually kill 3 original God realm experts. This kind of strength had never appeared since the ancient times, not even after that battle in ancient history. God King Lin, you're here? The God King of the 5th universe had a graceful figure. At this time, she stepped forward and politely cupped her hands in greeting. However, the person sitting on the chair was not herself, but an old woman. There was no doubt that this was also an original God realm ancient god. Not only the 5th universe, but most of the other universes also had original God realm experts. At this time, they all closed their eyes and rested. Obviously, some people were awakened by an emergency, and their condition was not very good. Lin Yu nodded his head in acknowledgement. He knew that the 5th universe had always had no ill intentions towards him. Lin Yu looked at the hall that was filled with hostility. This time, he came prepared. Bai Xiaoli was in his body. If the experts of the other universes were to target him together, he didn't mind completely quelling them. Even if he was tainted with the great karma that Bai Xiaoli mentioned, he didn't care. Above the hall were Demon Ancestor and the others. They came from the first universe and were powerful. However, the original God realm experts among them didn't appear. This didn't mean that there weren't any in the first universe. God King Lin, you should know what we are going to discuss in this meeting, right? Demon Ancestor's expression wasn't very good, but he still had a smile on his face. At the side, Celestial Venerable Hao was silent. He once had a grudge with Lin Yu. Now that he knew Lin Yu's strength, he didn't know how to open his mouth. However, now that there were ancient gods from several universes pressuring him, Lin Yu wouldn't dare to be too presumptuous. Of course I know. Lin Yu directly found a seat and sat down. He poured a cup of tea and took a sip. Now, the God King was the only one who was qualified to sit down. Lin Yu was the only one who was qualified to sit down. Because among the current God Kings, only he had the strength to stand shoulder to shoulder with the ancient gods. In fact, he even surpassed them. Facing Lin Yu's attitude, even the ancient gods who had been passively awakened didn't look too good. To them, this latecomer was too arrogant. Since you know, I think, the demon wanted to speak. However, he was interrupted by the ancient god of the sixth universe, an ancient god with a pair of rotten wings, who said, "Latecomer, you are very strong, but there is a great karma involved in controlling 4 universes. You can't bear it. Can your sixth universe withstand it?" Lin Yu put down his teacup and asked indifferently. Hearing Lin Yu's words, the ancient god of the sixth universe was startled. For a moment, he was speechless. "Be careful. There is a late original god realm expert here." Bai Xiaoli transmitted her voice. Lin Yu glanced at the ancient god of the fifth universe. This scene made the ancient god of the fifth universe exclaim in surprise. He said to the god king of the fifth universe behind him, "This kid is amazing. He actually knows my realm." "Yes, it's like what you said. I'm more and more interested in him," the ancient god of the fifth universe continued. The godly king of the fifth universe smiled generously. For a moment, the entire grand hall seemed to be overshadowed by him. Lin Yu nodded in response to Bai Xiaoli. If it was true, then all the universes were targeting him. The following matter would become very troublesome. Warriors at the late original god realm were unimaginable. Even before Bai Xiaoli recovered, it would be difficult to completely suppress him. After reaching the original god realm, even if it was a small realm, there was an insurmountable gap. "Kid, hard things are easy to break." The ancient god of the seventh universe spoke again. "Old man, you are the same." Lin Yu was neither servile nor overbearing. Now that they were equal in strength, the ancient god of the seventh universe was obviously mocking him. Lin Yu naturally wasn't afraid. "You." The ancient god of the seventh universe was so angry that he couldn't speak. Lin Yu continued, "You don't need to talk about karma. If there is, I will take it all. As for the others, if they don't offend me, I won't offend them. If other universes want to continue attacking the 12 universes, I don't mind wiping out a few more universes." As soon as these words came out, everyone kept quiet out of fear. Chapter 1251. The ancient god of the seventh universe stood up. His aura burst out. Even the main hall was shaking. The martial progenitor beast and the others immediately activated the formation to stabilize the palace. "Today, we're here to negotiate. We're not here to start a war." Ancestor Monster was sweating under the pressure of the original god realm expert. Lin Yu's words were as overbearing as usual. Only the ancient god of the fifth universe looked at Lin Yu with interest. His state is strange. He should be in the legendary god Forbidden Domain. She could see Lin Yu's realm at first glance. At the same time, she also felt a different aura in Lin Yu's sea of consciousness. This made her discolored. There's something incredible in his sea of consciousness. Then, the god king of the fifth universe also looked at Lin Yu. Lin Yu was facing the ancient god of the seventh universe, still sitting calmly on his chair. If it's true, then there's nothing to talk about. We can only conquer the 12 universes. The god king of the sixth universe also stood up, announcing that he would kill Lin Yu. Anytime. Lin Yu looked at the ancient gods of the 2 universes, his eyes sharp. The pressure of the original god realm expert spread to the incipient extent, frightening all the creatures there. All right. At this moment, the ancient god of the fourth universe came to mediate. His realm was at the middle original god realm. When he took action, he directly suppressed the aura of Lin Yu's team. However, this pressure was aimed at Lin Yu. Only Lin Yu and the other 2 were able to sense it clearly. Lin Yu snorted. In the past several months, he had refined the power of the 3 original god realm experts. Although he hadn't broken through to the original god realm yet, he still couldn't break through. Although he hadn't reached the middle original god realm yet, his aura wouldn't be lower than an ordinary middle original god realm expert. Moreover, the body of the middle original god realm expert of the fourth universe had a problem. He hadn't reached his peak yet. Lin Yu's aura suppressed the expert of the fourth universe. Everything happened so suddenly that even the ancient gods of Universe 4 couldn't react for a while. He was forced back half a step by this aura. However, this half step caused everyone's eyes to narrow. They all knew that Lin Yu hadn't broken through to the original god realm yet. However, the power that he was displaying now did not make sense. It was too powerful. There were probably only a few ancient gods present, but none of them were Lin Yu's match. To be able to kill Yu Hua and the other two, it seems that you do have some skills. The ancient god of Universe 10 had a cold look in his eyes. Initially, he had acted with arrogance as a senior. But now, he had to admit defeat in front of Lin Yu. This caused his expression to turn somewhat ugly. At the same time, some people also knew that his actions this time were somewhat intentional. From a certain perspective, it could be said that he was targeting Lin Yu. It was to suppress Lin Yu's arrogance. But in the end, he was the one who made a fool of himself. "You flatter me," Lin Yu just responded indifferently. Now, Lin Yu had almost become the public enemy of several universes. Many universes were either neutral or still watching, or some were obviously hostile to Lin Yu. If this discussion didn't go well, it was very likely that an unimaginable war would break out in the 12 universes. This was unprecedented. However, obviously, some people were worried about the overall situation and knew that the Black Calamity was coming. Fellow Taoists, please listen to me. The ancient god of the 8th universe had a bloated body and a white beard that trailed on the ground. He looked lazy, as if he had just been woken up by the commotion. He slowly said, "The main reason why we woke up now is because the Black Calamity is coming. I think the most important thing now is to discuss the Black Calamity, not to fight and consume ourselves." The ancient god of Universe 8 had a mysterious aura. Even Lin Yu couldn't see through him. He used to be an expert at the peak of the original god realm. But because of his injuries, he is now only at the middle stage of the original god realm. Bai Xiaoli said, "The original god of Universe 8 was definitely an existence that was difficult to provoke. The peak of original god realm was a realm that had almost broken through. Even if his realm had fallen, his comprehension of the Tao was absolutely unmatched. He was an extremely powerful existence. However, he didn't show any malice to Lin Yu. In any case, it's impossible to control 4 universes at the same time. This will affect the balance of the 12 universes." The ancient god of Universe 6 spoke at this time. He was still targeting Lin Yu. "I think we should remove the 10th universe, which has been removed from the list. The remaining 2 universes should be jointly managed and controlled by our universes." The ancient god of Universe 7 spoke at the right time. This was the meaning of the several universes. They didn't care about the survival of the other universes. Their own interests were greater than anything else. "We're here to reason with each other. I think we should be clear about who's right and who's wrong before we talk about other things." Just when the smell of gunpowder was very strong, at this time, the ancient god of Universe 5 finally spoke. She looked at Lin Yu with goodwill. Actually, everyone knew about Lin Yu's expedition to the 2nd and 3rd universes. The 2 universes coveted the 12 universes. Instead of controlling the 10th universe, they took action. Originally, they wanted to flatten the 12 universes and find the things left behind by the Supremes. However, they didn't expect Lin Yu's strength to have reached such a level. In the end, Yu Hua and the others died in the extraterrestrial battlefield of the 10th universe. Hearing the ancient god of Universe 5 say so, the ancient gods of Universe 7 and Universe 6 had ugly expressions. They vaguely knew the strength of the ancient god of Universe 5. Although they didn't know the specific realm, it was definitely not the middle stage of the original God realm. Moreover, her background was even more unimaginable. They suspected that she was the son of a Supremes in the past. She had mastered terrifying means. No one dared to provoke the ancient God of Universe 5. Her words carried a lot of weight. Hearing the ancient God of Universe 5 say so, they no longer dared to object. I would like to hear what godly King Lin has to say about the previous matter, the ancient God of Universe 5 said slowly. Her withered palm tapped on the table. She wanted to see Lin Yu's attitude. I think everyone knows about this matter. I don't need to say more. I can only say that the fault is not with the king. Today, whether it's the 10th universe, the 2nd universe, or the 3rd universe, they have only themselves to blame. Lin Yu cupped his hands toward the ancient God of Universe 5. He said. His tone was neither servile nor overbearing, even when facing the ancient God of Universe 5, who was suspected to be the daughter of a Supremes. After hearing Lin Yu's explanation, the ancient God of Universe 5 nodded slightly. In that case, I believe that all of you understand the truth. No universe can tolerate the provocation of others. Although God King Lin's method is very radical, there is nothing wrong with it, the ancient God of Universe 5 said once again. She looked at the ancient God of Universe 8. I'm too lazy to care about these trivial matters. If it weren't for the little child of my universe who said that there was something important, I wouldn't have come. After seeing the ancient God of Universe 5, the ancient God of Universe 8 opened his small eyes. I think what the fellow Taoist of Universe 5 said is right. After saying that, the ancient God of Universe 8 lay on the chair again. Not long after, there was a sound of snoring. No one dared to question his actions, because the ancient God of Universe 8 was too powerful. It was said that he had existed since the end of the war in ancient history. I seem to have some impression of this little guy. Bai Xiaoli looked at the ancient God of Universe 8, and a figure appeared in her mind. She continued, his grandmaster should be the Supremes of Universe 8, who cultivated the Dream Sky technique. Chapter 1252. Bai Xiaoli revealed the background of the ancient gods of the 8th universe. Since they were related to the Supremes, their strength wouldn't be simple. Lin Yu remembered the ancient gods of the 8th universe. Now that the ancient gods of the 8th and 5th universes had said so, even if the other universes had objections, they wouldn't dare to show it too much. The entire conference, from the smell of gunpowder, became silent. Universe 6 and the others all had indifferent gazes. However, they also realized that the ancient gods of the 5th universe were optimistic about Lin Yu. That was why they spoke up to defend him. After all, the godly monarch of a universe had never ruled over 4 universes since ancient times. However, everything could be imagined. It wouldn't be long before the development of the 12 universes would be unimaginable. At that time, there would be no force that could keep them in check. The current Lin Yu already had an invincible aura. When that time came, who could restrain him? If after a few years, the 12 universes develop rapidly and conquer the other universes, what will happen? The ancient god of the 7th universe still spoke at this time. This was not only his concern, but also the other universes that had been neutral all this time. After hearing what the ancient god of the 7th universe said, there was a bitter expression on their faces. Their misgivings were not without reason. At that time, everything would be uncertain. From Lin Yu's domineering temperament, they could see the future. I've already said that if people don't offend me, I won't offend them. As long as you know your place and don't disturb the 12 universes, we can live in peace, Lin Yu said. He drew a decree in the void. This was his promise. As the godly king of a universe, his promise naturally carried a lot of weight. This wasn't because Lin Yu was afraid of them. It was because he felt that there was no need to continue arguing. The most important thing now was to improve his strength. Only then could he fight against the strange race in the final black calamity. Since godly King Lin has already said so, this matter will end here, the ancient god of the fifth universe said at this time. She also didn't want to continue wasting time on this matter. This was because Lin Yu and the ancient gods of the other universes had a very tough attitude. It was impossible for them to back down. Lin Yu had already pacified 3 universes and promised not to invade other universes in the future. That was enough. After all, no one could say for sure what would happen next. The conference came to an end for the time being. Naturally, Universe 6 and Universe 7 were unwilling to accept this. However, the background of the God King of the fifth universe was hard to imagine, so they did not continue to argue. After the conference ended, they were still hostile towards Lin Yu. He left the hall. The God King of the fifth universe supported the ancient god and came to Lin Yu's side. "Young man, can you do me the honor of speaking with me?" The ancient god of the fifth universe sent out an invitation. "Of course," Lin Yu said. Lin Yu had always been the kind of person who would respect others tenfold. Lin Yu was grateful to the ancient god of the fifth universe for speaking up for him. The two came to a restaurant in Eldritch City. The ancestral demon and the others also knew that Lin Yu and the others had come here, so they specially ordered them to treat them well. Whether it was the ancient god of the fifth universe or Lin Yu, they were all existences that were difficult to provoke. Now, the few remaining ancient gods in the first universe were still in a deep sleep, and it was unknown when they would wake up. No one could resist the ancient gods of the fifth universe. In the quaint restaurant, the owner of the restaurant specially arranged a quiet courtyard for Lin Yu and the others. After the maid poured tea, she left the room. "Senior, why are you looking for me?" Lin Yu asked directly. The God King of the fifth universe also sat on the side. He looked at Lin Yu with a strange light in his eyes. "What do you think of the fifth universe?" The ancient god of the fifth universe went straight to the point. "The fifth universe is open and aboveboard. In my opinion, it is naturally very good," Lin Yu replied truthfully, without any falsehood. "That's good." The ancient god of the fifth universe continued with a smile. "Until now, we have not introduced ourselves. My name is Luo, and this is my cross-generational disciple and the current God King of the fifth universe, Su Ishui," the ancient god of the fifth universe introduced. At this time, Lin Yu seemed to have seen through the ancient god of the fifth universe, Luo's thoughts. It was just that the current Lin Yu could not directly say it. It was very abrupt to say it like this. "I'm Lin Yu." "Greetings, senior," Lin Yu responded politely. Now, Bai Xiaoli had explained Luo's identity. She was the young daughter of a supreme in the past. In the final battle, she was sealed by her mother and only came out later in the era. It was not a problem for Lin Yu to call her senior. After all, Luo's seniority was great. Compared to Bai Xiaoli, she was only 1 generation younger. Although Luo was young at that time and did not participate in the final battle, she also knew a lot of secrets of that era. "Greetings, God King Lin. God King Lin is really a celestial, making people respect you," the God King of the fifth universe, Su Ishui, said leisurely. Lin Yu returned the greeting. "I wonder if God King Lin has a celestial appearance of a generation. Has he married a wife?" Luo directly made her meaning clear and continued, "My cross-generational disciple has very high standards. God King Lin is the first one she has taken a fancy to." Su Ishui was generous and decent. At this time, she looked at Lin Yu with a smile. This made Lin Yu not know how to respond for a while. The people of the fifth universe were really straightforward and made their words clear. "Don't worry, my cross-generational disciple is not an old witch. She is not old." Luo smiled. The meaning was already obvious. "If you marry my disciple, the fifth universe and the 12th universe will be allies for a lifetime. Think about it, a God King's wife," Luo continued. "Back then, you were the supreme of the 12th universe, and you had a very good relationship with my mother. Why don't we continue that friendship in our era? Luo spoke of the relationship before ancient history. She was not embarrassed in the slightest. Senior, I'm really sorry, but I already have a wife, Lin Yu said apologetically. He had never encountered such a thing. Although Su Ishui was beautiful, with a crown and a beaded curtain on her head, her body was graceful, and her appearance was like that of a celestial being. Her beauty was indescribable, and she was gorgeous, but Lin Yu was not a lecherous person. Even if the other party was a god-king of a universe and had a noble status, Lin Yu could not lose his heart. It's okay, it's normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. Luo was open-minded. Su Ishui did not refuse. I don't have many interactions with God King Su. It's too abrupt. Lin Yu continued to refuse. Kid, don't rush to refuse. The women of the 5th universe are very special. Their dual cultivation method is unparalleled. Especially the God King of a universe. She bears the mandate of heaven. She can help you in the original God realm without any flaw. Bai Xiaoli knew many secrets, so she said. However, Lin Yu shook his head. Using the 5th universe like this was not Lin Yu's style. Although he was anxious to become stronger, he would not do this. Chapter 1253. Seeing Lin Yu's rejection, Su Ishui's face clearly revealed a sad expression. However, Luo wasn't discouraged and said, naturally, this matter can't be forced. However, I remember that the first-generation Divine King of the 12 universes left an artifact in the 12 universes that can help you step into the Supreme Realm. Luo said. Obviously, Luo wasn't talking nonsense when he said that the 5th and 12th universes were on good terms before the era. I can go to the 12 universes with you. There is also an artifact of my mother's that needs to be retrieved, Luo said. I wonder if Divine King Lin will allow it? Luo asked. Naturally, no problem, Lin Yu replied. He didn't know what the first-generation Divine King of the 12 universes left behind. After the 3 of them decided, they prepared to set off. Seeing Lin Yu and the rest leave, Celestial Venerable Hao and the rest heaved a sigh of relief. Lin Yu and the rest didn't step into the realm gate. Instead, they used not heaven and quickly arrived in the 12 universes. They arrived at the location of the Heaven City. Qin Wunyan and the rest came to the main hall. Luo and Su Ishui were also received with the highest standard. Divine King Lin, are you all right? Qin Wunyan knelt on the ground with endless respect. In these few battles, they already knew how powerful Lin Yu was. No matter who the opponent was, he was calm and collected. After the 12 universes took over the 3 universes, they sat on endless resources. In terms of development, they were like the sun in the sky. No one could stop them. The only thing that mattered was what had happened to Lin Yu at the conference. He was targeted afterwards. It's fine, everything has been resolved, Lin Yu replied. This is... Qin Wunyan looked at Luo and Su Ishui. Because of his realm, he couldn't see through Luo's identity. Now, Goddess Yu Qing and the rest had already gone to the 3rd universe to help the Darkness Priest and the rest take over the resources of the 3rd universe. In the 12 universes, only Qin Wunyan, Qin Ji, and the rest were left to guard and maintain order. In the following period of time, the 12 universes would have an extremely long period of rest and recuperation. After this period of time, the 12 universes would rise with unstoppable momentum. They are the ancient gods and god-kings of the 5th universe, Lin Yu said. Qin Wunyan and the others were shocked. The ancient gods and godly kings of the 5th universe had come to the 12th universe in person. However, Qin Wunyan and the others did not dare to have the slightest bit of neglect and immediately ordered people to prepare. They sat down in the main hall. Senior, why don't you rest in Heaven City for a day? When the time comes, we can search for the relics left behind by the first deity king. As the deity king, Lin Yu naturally had to be a good host. This is not bad. Luo looked at the orderly heaven city with a smile. The 12 universes really didn't disappoint. In the past, the first generation of divine kings was as handsome as jade, standing at the peak of an era. Now, it seems that the 12 universes will rise again. Luo was not stingy with his praise. Lin Yu responded politely. At the banquet, Lin Yu sat on the throne in the main hall. He asked Qin Wunyan at the side, "How is the situation of the third and second universes now?" "Everything is good, developing in the direction of the plan," Qin Wunyan reported. Because he used the power of the deity king order, Lin Xiu returned to the 10th universe long ago. The current Lin Xiu was already considered a deity king of a universe and was now a late-stage deity king. It was only because he was seriously injured previously that caused his realm to drop. Otherwise, he would have already tried to break through to the ancestor realm. Lin Yu was not surprised by the speed of Lin Xiu's realm progress, because Lin Xiu had perfectly inherited his talent and so on. His temperament and so on were also extremely determined. Now that he was sitting on the resources of a universe, it was not too surprising that his breakthrough speed was so fast. At the banquet, the powerhouses stationed in the 12 universes had already arrived at the banquet. Sui Shui came in front of Lin Yu, walked gracefully, and said with a smile, "This is the first time you have come to the 12 universes. This toast is to deity King Lin." Lin Yu raised his cup in response. Qin Ji looked at this scene and her eyes became strange. She was very mature. Although her realm was not high, she could also see Sui Shui's feelings for Lin Yu. Sui Shui was very bold. Facing Lin Yu, she did not put on the airs of a deity king at all and was never restrained by etiquette. This was also what Luo Xian had secretly promised. The next day, the sun shone on Heaven City, and the immortal fog was hazy. The Yao Qi here had already surpassed the peak when Lin Yu was not in control of the 12 universes. Lin Yu was already standing on Heaven City at this time, dressed in white. His eyes were deep as he looked at the mountains and rivers of the 12 universes. "Deity King Lin, are you reminiscing?" Sui Shui changed into a red dress at this time and wore a golden hairpin in her hair. She was not as graceful and luxurious as before, but added some charm. She had a teasing expression as she stood beside Lin Yu. The distance between the two was very close. Qin Ji sighed softly below and said, "This kind of man is really attractive." She knew that the ancient gods and deity kings of the 5th universe, they came to the 12 universes for important matters. Currently, the 12 universes was very short of manpower. Qin Ji was busy both inside and outside. After seeing Lin Yu and Luo Xian, she no longer reported some matters and continued to deal with other matters. 2 hours later, Luo Xian appeared on the city wall. The three did not stay any longer and went to the Hongmeng continent. At this time, a keepsake appeared on Luo's withered palm. It was a piece of ancient jade. It was entirely green, but half of it was missing. There was an obvious gap on it. However, it still revealed a power that made one's heart palpitate. It was unknown why it was broken. Otherwise, it would definitely be a supreme treasure. After taking out the ancient jade, there was a trace of sadness in Luo's eyes. Even if she had experienced countless years, it was still difficult for her to forget the past. The ancient jade began to emit a sparkling luster as Luo's aura was injected. A green light shot into the distance, pointing in a direction. "It's the east again," Lin Yu muttered. Lin Yu already had a vague guess in that direction. The Hongmeng continent was very vast, but it was nothing for Lin Yu and the others. In almost a few breaths, they arrived at the east side of the Hongmeng continent. Outside the forgotten immortal sect, immortal mist was hazy. The three of them had already appeared outside a thatched house. It was unknown how much time had passed. Even though Qin Ji and the others had rebuilt the Hongmeng continent, the thatched house still looked the same. It was not destroyed along with the Hongmeng continent. Lin Yu looked at the thatched house. It was very familiar. This was the starting point of his reincarnation during the 100,000 years of his reincarnation. This was the same as Lin Yu's guess. The thatched house involved a secret and was closely related to the first deity king. Lin Yu thought of the thatched house on Earth's immortal island in the first universe. Was there a connection? Chapter 1254. Under Luo's ancient jade, the thatched cottage underwent a mysterious change. The thatched cottage, which had existed since ancient times, emitted a simple gray light that contained the power of time and space. Lin Yu and the rest were swallowed before they could react. The aura of the thatched cottage was imbued with a paramount intent, and even Rodu found it difficult to resist. Everyone's expressions shifted drastically upon seeing this. The aura was extremely domineering. It did not give them any chance to resist. As the door of the thatched cottage opened, Lin Yu and the rest seemed to have been abandoned by the world and entered an unknown space-time. After an unknown period of time, Lin Yu and the rest appeared in an unknown space. Rays of light surrounded the sky, bringing with them boundless vitality. However, there were no living creatures here. There were only endless ancient trees. In the middle, there was a majestic mountain that pierced through the clouds. Lin Yu looked at the space and felt a sense of familiarity. This was the place where he had met his father in the eastern sea region of the Hongmeng continent. However, this place gave off a more oppressive feeling. It was as if only space existed here. As for time, it had stopped at a certain point in time. A gentle breeze blew past, but it was unable to move the leaves of the ancient trees. Even the stream at the side had stopped at a certain point. As Lin Yu scooped up some water and dripped it down his fingertips, there was a slight movement. Perhaps the thing we are looking for is on the mountain in the middle. Lin Yu looked ahead and voiced his guess. This was because the layout of this place was very similar to the world in the eastern sea region of the Hongmeng continent. Lin Yu did not know why such a mysterious space would appear in the thatched cottage. However, he was not wrong. Lin Yu had carefully investigated this place during the million years of reincarnation. However, perhaps because his cultivation was too weak back then, he didn't notice any clues at all. Now, with the help of Luo's ancient jade, Lin Yu finally witnessed the truth of the thatched cottage. It turned out that there was a hidden universe within. Divine King Lin has been here before? Su Yishui was in disbelief. Lin Yu shook his head slowly. I've never been here before. I've only been to a similar place, Lin Yu replied. This place must be left behind by your ancestor, the first God King. Luo's gaze became incomparably deep. At the same time, she spread out her cultivation to sense a different aura. However, the suppression of the Tao laws here was extremely strong. Even if Luo had the token of an utmost being, he could not unleash his full strength right now. At this moment, the God King's order within Lin Yu's body began to move. It was as if it had a life of its own. A sense of death flowed out from the God King's order. This made Lin Yu feel very strange. Because the God King's token had accompanied him for so many years, it had always been silent. His system had always been cold and aloof, but now it was showing its emotions. Now, Lin Yu was certain that this might be the remains of the first godly king of the 12 universes. That was the only reason why the God King's medallion would react so strangely. At this moment, Lin Yu finally understood why he had always awakened in this place during the 100,000 years of reincarnation. It turned out that the thatched house that he had been living in actually contained such a secret. When he looked back, everything was still in the same place. This made Lin Yu feel a sense of helplessness. The item that they were talking about was left behind by the first godly king. It turned out that it had accompanied him for 100,000 years, and he had actually missed it for such a long time. The few of them continued to move forward. At this moment, Su Yishui observed Lin Yu's expression. She seemed to have seen through his complicated emotions. God King Lin, what's wrong? Are you feeling melancholy? Sui Shui teased. Her sweet smile made all the flowers and trees here lose their splendor. Sui Shui was like a fairy flower that had been left behind in the world. Her eyes were bright and kind. Lin Yu didn't try to hide anything. This was my residence before I found out about my origins, he said bluntly. This point piqued Luo's curiosity. However, when he thought about the relationship between Lin Yu and that utmost being, he no longer had any doubts. Although their cultivation levels were severely suppressed right now, in terms of speed, they weren't slow at all. In just a few hours they had already advanced a huge distance. They were almost at the location of the mountain. The white clouds that surrounded the waist of the mountain had been stagnant. The only ones that were moving were Lin Yu and the other two. The three of them walked in the ancient forest. There was a strange feeling. It was as though they were transcendents. The current world's laws had been completely destroyed and could not be restored. Only they were still awake. It took a few more hours. The few of them finally arrived at the foot of the mountain. When Sui Shui wanted to go forward to scout the way, a terrifying aura suddenly erupted. The river of time appeared at this moment and surrounded the mountain. Pieces of lost history began to appear here. The first godly king of the 12 universes back then was indeed powerful. He actually cut off the river of time in the official history and used it to protect this place. Luo had a shocked expression. This was something that was difficult for people of their level to come into contact with. This place had already emitted a supreme will. Just by staying here, they could feel that they were about to be crushed into powder by this aura and merged into the broken river of time. No wonder that part of history is no longer known. It's because the first godly king of the 12 universes cut off that part of history. Sui Shui wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth like a piece of golden paper. Could it be that the utmost being back then wanted to hide something and did not want the future generations to know about some untouchable anecdote? Sui Shui expressed her doubts. In the current world, there were indeed records of the period before the ancient history. No one knew what those utmost beings back then had encountered to cause them to pass away. Lin Yu and the others stopped here. It was just that the river of time here was already broken. There were turbulent flows in it, making it difficult to see clearly. Otherwise, Lin Yu and the others could get some useful information from it. At least they could know what kind of enemy the utmost being back then faced. Or perhaps, just how powerful were the strange races. Luo looked at the chaotic river of time with disappointment. She forcefully activated the ancient jade in her hand. The mysterious aura on it began to emit. The ancient jade in her hand revealed the power of the utmost being. It actually wanted to forcefully correct the chaotic river of time here and rearrange it. Mother, where are you? What did you face back then? Luo's eyes could not help but shed 2 lines of tears. Back then, she was simply too young. In the final battle, she was sealed. After the river of time collapsed, she was reborn. She did not know what exactly happened back then. She wanted to know from this place. The aura of the ancient jade was even stronger. Luo did not hesitate to use her source. Sui Shui, who was at the side, was also sad. She knew that her master had an obsession. Now, she did not care about the danger and came to Luo's side. However, the river of time was not something that they could come into contact with their current level. It was just a weak stream of turbulence, but it almost killed the two of them. Even their traces were almost erased. Their bodies were slowly dissipating. Because of the protection of the ancient jade, they barely maintained their bodies. Lin Yu sighed slightly. He took a step forward, and the God King's order in his body burst forth with power. The God King's order contained the power of time and space. Right now, its effect was far more useful than the ancient jade in Luo's hand. However, this kind of effect was also negligible. The power of the few of them was like an ant. How could it be easy to shake a tree? Chapter 1255. However, with the addition of Lin Yu, Luo and Sui Shui were obviously much more relaxed. Luo was obviously a little surprised. Although he knew that Lin Yu had the artifact of the first divine king of the 12 universes, he didn't expect the power to be so mysterious. But even so, the three of them were still very strained. Lin Yu and Luo were still fine, but Sui Shui, who was only at the late-stage ancestor realm, was much more difficult. Her current form was fading away. If she continued to forcibly inject power into the ancient jade, she might die because of it. She would completely fall. Luo woke up from her disappointment. She operated her cultivation and directly pushed Sui Shui outside. Divine King Lin Yu, thank you. Luo thanked Lin Yu. It's okay. I also want to know what happened in that era. Lin Yu responded calmly. Senior, inject the power of your ancient jade into my body. Lin Yu spoke again. Luo also knew that Lin Yu had the artifact of the first divine king of the 12 universes on him, which could resist the chaotic river of time. She didn't hesitate at all. She reversed the power of the ancient jade and gathered it in the direction of Lin Yu. Lin Yu's eyes were blooming with a bright light at this time. This power was almost unbearable for him, and there was a danger of his body exploding. He immediately used the power of the ancient word to suppress his body and stabilize it that was about to crack. His bright eyes looked straight at the river of time in front of him. He operated the Divine King's order with all his strength. The mysterious power of time and space began to emit. The gentle white light beam, as if turning into a big hand, began to fiddle with the river of time and space. Such a method was very dangerous. It could easily lead to eternal damnation. Sui Shui was sweating for Lin Yu and Luo. It was just that with her current realm, she really couldn't play much of a role. If she went forward now in a weak state, it might distract the two of them. So she immediately sat cross-legged on the ground and began to recover her aura. Rumble of the entire space seemed to be shaking. The river of time involved a taboo. Even the supreme beings of the past found it difficult to truly come into contact with it and disturb it. The only people who had such strength were the first god-kings of the 12 universes. They were peerless figures who had simultaneously grasped the laws of time and space. Lin Yu's consciousness continued to extend into the broken river of time. Only then did he realize how powerful his first ancestor was back then. Although Lin Yu had never come into contact with the highest realm, the river of time had always been a taboo in the records of ancient history. You can use supreme methods to shatter it, but if you want to refine it into such a state, it is simply unimaginable. After stabilizing his mind, Lin Yu began to circulate his cultivation with all his might. He used the ancient characters to suppress himself and the clay jar to stabilize his divine sense. At this moment, Bai Xiaoli had also awakened from her deep slumber. When he opened his eyes and saw what Lin Yu and the others were doing, he was shocked. You guys are so bold. Even I didn't dare to use the power of time back then. Bai Xiaoli spoke in Lin Yu's sea of consciousness. The current situation was already extremely dangerous. Bai Xiaoli directly appeared in this space. Little kid, you're too bold. Bai Xiaoli said to Luo. You are one of the 10 great monster kings. At this moment, Luo had already used the power of the origin. It was just for the obsession in his heart. He wanted to know what happened to his mother back then. The power of time, other than that person, even your mother back then couldn't touch it. While Bai Xiaoli was using the supreme method, he looked at the chaotic river of time and said with some surprise, No, this isn't the real river of time. Bai Xiaoli came to a realization and said, It's the method of that person back then. I didn't expect that after the 10 great monster kings were sealed back then, he had almost broken through to this step. He could forcefully cut off the river of time and refine it in his tomb. Bai Xiaoli obviously knew a lot of things. Now, he directly said it. This undoubtedly made Lin Yu and the others slightly surprised. It turned out that this was the tomb of the first godly king of the 12 universes. No wonder the Tao of time here was so terrifying that it caused the entire world to stagnate. Lin Yu looked up at the mountain. From Luo, he had already learned that the first godly king back then was his first ancestor. From Bai Xiaoli's words, the first godly king of the 12 universes back then was such a terrifying figure. But now, he had already passed away. But now, the most important thing was how to resist the river of time. Even Bai Xiaoli felt that it was very troublesome. Bai Xiaoli's 9 fox tails burst out with unparalleled light, and the power of time and space appeared on them. Unexpectedly, Bai Xiaoli also mastered the secret skill of time and space. At my level, if you understand one skill, you can understand all skills. Although it's not as profound as your old ancestor, I can still barely use it. Bai Xiaoli explained to Lin Yu. Lin Yu nodded, although he didn't ask Bai Xiaoli. Now that he had Bai Xiaoli's help, Lin Yu and Luo Binghe clearly felt a lot more relaxed. This was because Bai Xiaoli had used the power of the clay pot to recuperate in Lin Yu's body. In such a short time, she had almost recovered to the peak of the original God realm. He was also once a supreme living being. The suppression of the Tao of this place didn't have as obvious an effect on him as it did on Lin Yu and the others. Therefore, the power that he could release was more than several times that of Lin Yu and the others combined. Just as well. Back then, I also didn't know what happened in the end. Bai Xiaoli looked at the chaotic river of time. She was now using the power of Lin Yu's godly king token. From the chaotic river of time, she pulled out the cocoon and peeled the silk, finding out the truth. It was just that this broken scene was shrouded in fog. It wasn't something that Lin Yu and the others could understand at their current level. In this scene, there were several imposing figures standing on top of a tall city wall. Their faces were always shrouded in fog. Even their bodies were difficult to see clearly. It wasn't that they deliberately hid their faces, but that even the heavens and earth couldn't imprint their bodies. These were the supreme beings of the past. They were boundlessly terrifying. Just by standing there, the Tao laws were retreating, and all the Daos were prostrating at their feet. Mother, Luo Binghe saw his mother's figure in a corner of the fragment. Although it was blurry, it came from a deep level of perception. It couldn't be wrong. Lin Yu also sensed it in his heart. He looked at the first imposing figure on the right. Although he couldn't see the specific appearance, from the otherworldly temperament, he could tell that it was definitely a peerless figure. "Is this my first ancestor?" Lin Yu murmured. The 12 universes were built because of him. As the scene continued to move, just as Lin Yu was staring at the imposing figure, a voice suddenly rang out. That imposing figure seemed to have sensed Lin Yu's gaze. At this moment, he actually looked at Lin Yu through the fragments of the river of time. Such means were truly terrifying. Just like that, the two of them looked at each other across the river of time. With just a glance, Lin Yu felt that he was going to lose himself. At this moment, the God King's token in his body was even shaking, wanting to rush out of Lin Yu's body and into the fragments of the river of time. From the beginning to the end, that imposing man didn't say a single word. Time and space turned into 2 huge dragons that circled around his body. He turned his head. Below the city wall, an indescribable horror was happening. Even the fragments of the river of time couldn't reflect it. Even if this was a real event that happened in history, it was difficult for history to manifest. It was enough to see what the supreme beings of the past were facing. Chapter 1256. The last scene was fixed on the sky above the city wall. A pair of indifferent eyes appeared in the sky. His eyes seemed to be even larger than a universe. Everything that happened after that was unknown. Lin Yu and Luo's eyes flowed with tears of blood. Just the sight of this scene was enough to injure their foundations. The two of them did not have time to circulate their cultivation to heal their injuries. What they were witnessing right now was simply too shocking. It was beyond their understanding. That pair of eyes was unimaginably terrifying. Could that be the ancestor of the strange clan? Lin Yu could not help but ponder. If that was the case, then the strange clan was too powerful. It made it difficult for all living beings to breathe. At the same time, just by seeing this scene, Lin Yu seemed to realize why his ancestor would cut off this period of time and bury him in his tomb. "Kid, quickly take out your clay pot." At this time, Bai Xiaoli, who had already merged into the chaotic long river of time, said anxiously. Lin Yu did not hesitate at all. The moment he took out the clay pot, the entire space here was collapsing. At the same time, an incomparably evil aura began to surge and appeared in front of them. That pair of eyes, at this time, actually came to the present world through the fragments of the long river of time. The entire 12 universes was shrouded in the evil aura at this time. In the 12 universes there was a huge turmoil. Because of the appearance of this evil aura, the evil in the hearts of the living beings in the 12 universes was infinitely magnified. All the sects and forces, without caring about anything else, began their own conquest. Because in Heaven City, Lin Yu set up a restriction with the ancient characters and the clay pot's power, it was not affected much. However, the signs of chaos in the 12 universes made the upper echelons in Heaven City helpless. Everything happened too suddenly. At this time, the entire 12 universes was bleeding. Whether it was ordinary people or cultivators, the evil in their hearts had been awakened. On the streets, there were ordinary people who were either holding hoes or kitchen knives as they chased after each other. The scene among the cultivators was even more tragic. Sects were easily destroyed by powerful cultivators. Countless living beings died because of this. What happened? God King Lin should be able to sense the changes that happened. Because of Qin Wunyan's cultivation, there was nothing he could do. He could only pace back and forth in the hall, not knowing what to do. Qin Ji also appeared in the hall and said, God King Lin and the others are currently from the 12 universes. Perhaps this anomaly is related to them. They will find a way to solve it. Qin Ji said one last sentence. They had already sent out people to investigate the situation at the same time when the strange change occurred. However, without exception, as soon as they left Heaven City, they all acted like crazy demons and lost their mind. They began to kill each other until they died. In the space of the thatched cottage, the situation was even more terrifying. If it weren't for the fact that Bai Xiaoli was in charge of the jar, Sui Shui might have already lost herself. This evil power could stir up the 7 emotions and 6 desires of living beings, almost without any warning. Lin Yu was the closest to them, so he was the most affected. If it weren't for his extraordinary temperament, he might have already fallen for it. The ancient characters appeared beside him, protecting Su Yishui and Luo at the same time. Bai Xiaoli's current figure was no longer known where she was standing. One could only see that the jar above was bursting with endless ancient brilliance at this moment. It made this place seem to have returned to the beginning of the world. The evil aura was constantly being suppressed by him. Is this the hidden danger brought about by touching this period of history? Su Yishui's face revealed fear for the first time. This scene was too shocking for her. At this moment, 5 ancient characters of origin rushed out from Bai Xiaoli's body. With endless mystery, it gave birth to the truth of heaven and earth. These were all the ancient characters of origin that Bai Xiaoli had mastered. Moreover, she had comprehended all of them and completely mastered them. The ancient characters were imprinted on the surface of the jar. With the support, the jar's power increased again. In that period of history you have already been suppressed. Just hide like a turtle. One could hear Bai Xiaoli's shout erupting from the chaotic long river of history. The Tao laws that Bai Xiaoli had mastered were far more powerful than Lin Yu and the rest. Therefore, from the fragments of the long river of time, she saw the history that Lin Yu and the rest did not know. He already knew that the owner of the pair of eyes had been suppressed by the few supremes. Now, because Lin Yu and the rest had touched the fragments of the long river of history, it was reflected in the present world. This terrifying power made Su Yishui fearful. This was the main reason why the first-generation godly kings of the 12 universes cut off this part of history. As long as the people of the world still had the memory of the strange eyes in their hearts, they would be revived. As long as there was a memory in their hearts, this kind of living being could not be destroyed. For the first time, Lin Yu witnessed the terror of the supremes of the strange race. At this moment, Bai Xiaoli had already unleashed all of her power. The jar was trembling. Some of the patterns on it began to revive under Bai Xiaoli's ancient words. This was a state that had never appeared since Lin Yu had taken control of the jar. It was enough to see how terrifying the crisis this time was. Time passed by without knowing how long. Lin Yu felt that he was gradually unable to hold on. His strength was gradually fading away. Even though he had the protection of the ancient characters, his cultivation level was still too weak compared to the number of characters at this level. His power was constantly being absorbed by the evil aura. But fortunately, Bai Xiaoli had already begun to weaken the power of the evil aura. Finally, this aura is suppressed. Just as Su Yishui heaved a sigh of relief. Within the fragments of the long river of time, a few more evil auras appeared. They began to gather together. This was undoubtedly despairing. I didn't expect that even if your true body was suppressed, you would still be alive in the ancient history. Now, with the help of this dusty long river of time, you want to revive again. Bai Xiaoli's voice rang out again. He was talking to the evil aura. However, his voice had already become weak. I'm not in my peak state after all. Otherwise, you wouldn't be so arrogant. Bai Xiaoli continued. Obviously, in the face of the appearance of a few more evil auras, Bai Xiaoli could no longer hold on. Just as the few of them were in despair. What's wrong, Fox? Can't hold on anymore? A voice rang out. No one knew where it came from, but it was distant and mighty. Judging from its age, it seemed to be very young. It's you. Bai Xiaoli's figure appeared in front of Lin Yu and the others. The white light around his body had already weakened. Bai Xiaoli's eyes looked towards the eternal and unknown. He only said one sentence, but immediately came to a realization. He said, I knew it. Since you've mastered the time and space Dao rules, it's impossible that you didn't set up some trick. Wouldn't it be fine if you didn't make a move? That voice was filled with a teasing tone. Sorry, I don't have that habit. Bai Xiaoli continued with a disdainful tone. Annoying fellow, hurry up and clean up the mess. Bai Xiaoli seemed to be very familiar with the first-generation divine king of the 12 universes. She did not treat him as an outsider when she spoke. Chapter 1257. The first godly king of the 12 universes made his move at this moment. The endless power of time and space began to surge. The godly king's order was trembling, wanting to break free from Lin Yu's grasp and return to the hands of its former master to suppress the enemy together. Little order, there's no need to come. The first godly king stopped the order. The first godly king of the 12 universes displayed boundless confidence. Even though he had already passed away, and what appeared now was merely a reflection from the past, he still didn't fear anything. Time and space were like tame pets in his hand. With a raise of his hand, it was a supreme technique that nothing could resist. In the rush of time, I, Lin Xian, am the only one. It was a simple sentence, but it was filled with boundless dominance. His voice seemed to have penetrated through the ages and reached the real world. Su Yishui and Luo both carried shock as they looked at the man who was shrouded in the mist. The first godly king of the 12 universes did not use the power of the ancient characters, but what he displayed was even more profound than the ancient characters. Lin Yu stood in front. Lin Xian led his divine consciousness into the fragments of the long river of time. Although only a wisp of it was received, Lin Yu could now clearly perceive this battle. He saw that above the real long river of time, there were two supreme figures standing. One was dressed in white, and the other was a pair of eyes condensed from an evil aura. It did not have a real body, but it was devouring everything. The periods of time below were like specks of dust. Under their figures, they were not conspicuous at all. Lin Yu's strand of consciousness had completely merged with Lin Xian's. It was as if he was Lin Xian, and Lin Xian was him. The two of them were inseparable, and had a high degree of compatibility. This allowed Lin Yu to clearly sense the power of the Tao in Lin Xian's body. Lin Yu knew that this was deliberately done by his ancestor to pass down the Tao to him through the ages. Time and space turned into substance under Lin Xian's feet. Like two millstones, they pressed down on the strange substance, wanting to crush it completely. At this time, the strange substance said something that couldn't be understood. Even his divine sense couldn't sense its specific meaning. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Every time you revive, I will kill you until your unyielding will is shattered. Lin Xian was extremely calm. As for Bai Xiaoli, she curled her lips in disdain. Clearly, he was not used to Lin Xian's words. However, his current cultivation had yet to return to its peak state. Thus it was of no use. Otherwise, he would have already suppressed the evil substance here before coming here. That was how strong and confident he was. Lin Xian stood above the river of time, as if he was overlooking the passage of time. There was only respect in his eyes, and there was a sense of vicissitudes. Lin Yu could clearly sense this state of mind. At this moment, a different kind of understanding arose in his heart. It seemed like he was one step closer to breaking through the original God realm. The millstone formed by time and space was already crushing the evil substance. The evil substance couldn't even resist. Its body was imprisoned above the river of time. Lin Xian was the master of time and space. No one could break free from his means. The only way was to die. An unknown amount of time passed. It seemed like an eternity, but also like an instant. The evil substance was crushed. However, in the upper reaches of the broken fragments of the river of time, more evil substance gathered towards the will that was about to be destroyed. Lin Xian just watched indifferently and didn't stop it. He seemed to be deliberately letting Lin Yu comprehend his own Tao law. The river of time was shaking. Every peerless figure in history felt the change and looked up at the Tao law in the sky. The river of time appeared in every era. However, it was quickly forgotten. It was difficult for them to remember this moment. As the evil substance continued to gather towards the will, it gradually grew stronger and was about to break free from the cage formed by time and space. Lin Xian just lightly extended a finger. The power of the millstone increased again. Until now, Lin Xian still hadn't used his full strength. He was toying with the evil substance. It seems like you're really about to break through that step. Bai Xiaoli looked at Lin Xian's means with a rare serious expression. You don't have to give up on that path for the sake of opening a path for the future generations. Bai Xiaoli looked at the slender figure standing above the river of time and said in a low voice, as if she was talking to herself. Lin Xian didn't respond to her words. The evil substance was destroyed again. However, the evil substance seemed to be endless. More of it appeared in the river of time and began to gather. However, Lin Xian didn't show any change in expression. It was just as he said. Every time the evil substance revived, he would destroy it. He wanted to crush its unyielding will. An unknown amount of time passed. The evil substance gathered 9 times. Each time, it was easily destroyed by Lin Xian. Until the river of time began to dim. Lin Xian only stopped when the evil substance no longer gathered. I wanted to destroy more, but it seems like you're starting to be cautious and afraid. Lin Xian's words were regretful and mocking at the same time. His words were directed at the evil substance. He was so domineering and confident. His figure began to slowly dissipate. Lin Xian sat cross-legged on the river of time, and for the first time, he revealed a sense of loss. In the end, everyone passed away. Family, close friends, even though I controlled time and space, I couldn't bring you back. Lin Xian looked at the upper reaches of the river of time, but he couldn't see the figures of the people he was familiar with. That was because even their true spirits had been obliterated in that battle. Their figures in the long river of history had been completely obliterated. They now only existed in Lin Xian's memories. Lin Yu could clearly sense the sorrow. The God King's token vibrated more and more violently, as if it wanted to come to the river of time and accompany its master on this final journey. However, with a point of Lin Xian's finger, the God King's token fell completely silent. He didn't want the God King's token to appear by his side. The enemies he encountered in that era were too powerful and unpredictable. He could follow the karma and erase the God King's token. The God King's token was the only artifact left by Lin Xian. It had already gained sentience, and he didn't want the only thing he had to disappear. It wasn't until a long time later that Lin Xian, who was sitting cross-legged on the river of time, completely disappeared. Even the traces of his existence had been eliminated. Even in Luo and Su Yishui's memories, Lin Xian didn't appear. Lin Yu's consciousness returned to his body. He was silent for a long time. Finally, he bowed to the river of time that was about to disappear and sent off his first ancestor. Lin Yu was silent for an extremely long time. In his heart, a thought arose. If that day came, would he also follow in the footsteps of his first ancestor? Everyone around him had passed away. He searched the river of time and couldn't see their figures again. Only he was left, alone with the heavenly Tao. What just happened? Su Yishui said with a puzzled expression, "It seems that a memory has disappeared in my mind." Lin Yu and Bai Xiaoli didn't answer Su Yishui's puzzlement. Lin Yu, Bai Xiaoli, and Luo returned to the chaotic river of time. Bai Xiaoli and Lin Yu didn't answer Su Yishui's question. The evil substance was very strange. If it appeared in the memories of a living being, as long as there was a thought, it could be revived. Chapter 1258. Because Lin Yu had the clay pot, there was no problem with this memory. As for a supreme being like Bai Xiaoli, she had once fought with this strange race, and would not be affected in the slightest. The few of them did not stop. Instead, using the power of the God King badge, they passed through the broken river of time and entered the real mountain. It was also a small path paved with green stone slabs. There was even moss growing on it. Lin Yu and the rest followed the small path. After spending 2 hours, they arrived at the peak of the mountain. The scene here was exactly the same as what Lin Yu saw in the eastern sea region of the primordial continent. It was just that there was no figure of his father on it. Instead, there was a bronze coffin. There were patterns of birds and beasts engraved on it. This was the coffin that buried the utmost being. God's spirit coffin. Luo's knowledge was extraordinary. He recognized the coffin immediately. It was emitting a terrifying aura. The God Spirit coffin buried the utmost being. However, the God Spirit coffin would only enter the boundless void. But for some reason, it stopped here. Back then, the utmost being did not want the strange matter in his body to affect the living beings of the future. That was why he buried himself in the boundless void, never to return. Bai Xiaoli said. He was also filled with respect towards the God Spirit coffin. He participated in the final battle. It was just that he did not meet the opponent of the utmost being. The battlefield of the 10 demon kings was in another place. However, when the utmost being was about to die, he sent out a message. At the same time, there were utmost beings who fell prematurely. Therefore, Bai Xiaoli knew what the utmost being experienced after he passed away. Luo and Sui Shui bowed deeply towards the god-spirit coffin. In order to open up a path for the future generations, the heroes of the past buried themselves after knowing that they were infected with the strange matter and that their lives were about to wither. There was no return after death. Even the memories of the people of the world were wiped away. This boldness was truly moving. Lin Yu looked at the coffin of his first ancestor and bowed deeply as well. In front of the coffin there were two items: a broken zither and an ancient token. This was the reason why Lin Yu and the others had come here. However, Lin Yu didn't expect that he would still be able to see first ancestor's invincible figure. Primordial Guqin. Luo looked at the object in front of the coffin. His eyes were filled with memories. This was her mother's supreme weapon back in the day. She hadn't expected that the artifact in the 12 universes was actually her mother's supreme artifact. But now, the primordial Guqin had appeared here. It had once been inseparable from his mother. This meant that the primordial god of Universe 5 had completely passed away, falling in the final battle. Otherwise, her supreme weapon would not have been taken away by Lin Xian and placed in front of her coffin. The ancient jade glowed, and the primordial Guqin appeared in Luo's hand. She gently stroked the Guqin with endless longing. At this moment, the ancient medallion appeared in Lin Yu's body and fused with the godly king's medallion. It took a long time for the King of Gods token to completely absorb the ancient token. It seemed that the King of Gods token was now completely complete. At the same time, mysterious information appeared in Lin Yu's Sea of Consciousness. This was the artifact that the other universes had always coveted. It could lead to the supreme level. However, even if they obtained it, they would not be able to decipher it without the King of Gods token. Only Lin Yu was qualified to obtain it. Lin Yu closed his eyes and digested the information rapidly in his mind. After witnessing the battle between his first ancestor and the evil substance, Lin Yu already had a realization in his heart. He had a clear plan for his future path, especially when breaking through to the original God realm. However, Lin Yu knew that his endpoint couldn't be at the original God realm. Instead, he had to reach the supreme level. The item left behind by first ancestor was the best creation. With his current realm, it was still difficult for him to comprehend the information within. He could only take it step by step. Lin Xian didn't leave behind any shocking divine item that could help Lin Yu break through to the supreme realm. He had high expectations for the people of the future generations. He didn't want their footsteps to stop at the supreme realm. Lin Yu recalled what Bai Xiaoli said just now. His first ancestor had the hope of breaking through to the next level. However, he gave up on it of his own accord, leaving behind an eternity of regret. First ancestor, I will make up for your regret, Lin Yu said slowly to the god's coffin. Now, he had shouldered the responsibility of protecting the 12 universes for the living beings in the world. Bai Xiaoli only looked at the god's coffin quietly without saying a word. Back then, he had a close relationship with the first-generation king of the 12 universes. It was just that with the passage of time everything had changed. He didn't know that he was sealed and was sometimes good and sometimes bad. However, there is one advantage. In the battle of the present era, there will be no regrets. The continuation of the ancient times will eventually be buried. Bai Xiaoli muttered softly. After they had gotten what they wanted, they decided to leave. It's not convenient to disturb the supreme's slumber. Let's leave, Luo said. At the same time, she looked at Lin Yu with mixed feelings. After all, Lin Yu had the bloodline of the Supreme, just like her. The few of them left the space of the straw hut. This fellow might not be buried here. Bai Xiaoli scoffed and said, his nature. Bai Xiaoli didn't continue. The few of them embarked on their journey back. What kind of person was my first ancestor back then? Lin Yu was slightly curious. Powerful, peerless powerful. People can only look up to him. His talent is also unparalleled since ancient times. Luo didn't pity her own praise at all when she mentioned the first-generation king of the 12 universes. She continued, although I was young back then, I have an impression of your first ancestor. Back then, I was still young and often came to the 12 universes. It wasn't convenient for Luo to elaborate on the specifics. This involved the past of the Supreme. However, from Luo's expression, Lin Yu could see some clues. It seemed that his first ancestor was also a charming man at that time, causing the first-generation king of the 5th universe to be infatuated with him. In the 5th universe there was a large river. The women of the 5th universe, when they reached a certain age, would drink it and give birth to daughters. However, there were also examples of intermarriage with other universes, but it was very rare. Therefore, in the 5th universe there were only women. Luo looked at Sui Shui and Lin Yu and couldn't help but sigh softly. She muttered to herself, history is always such a coincidence. After the few of them returned to Heaven City, they took a short rest. And now, Bai Xiaoli's cultivation recovered very quickly through the treatment of the clay pot. She could now return to the 10-square world. Therefore, she didn't stay. After saying a few simple words to Lin Yu, she returned to the 10-square world. Lin Yu was also about to break through and was preparing to enter seclusion. Now that the God Prohibition domain was fading, Lin Yu returned to the peak of the Ancestor realm. Now, his body was brimming with the unique aura of the original God realm. Divine King Su, ancient God Luo, why don't you stay in the 12 universes for a while longer? Qinji said timely. Su Ishui's eyes revealed a trace of a smile. That's good. After returning to the 5th universe, we have nothing to do for the time being. Let's stay in the 12 universes for a while. Luo replied, there is still some nostalgia here. My master is traveling the 12 universes. With the people of your universe accompanying him, why don't I protect you? Sui Shui said generously. She didn't find any reason that she didn't like to travel and said straightforwardly. Lin Yu, as the divine king of the 12 universes, had a bearing. The visitor was a guest, so it was not good to refuse. He sighed softly and said, in that case, thank you, Divine King Su. Divine King Lin is too polite. Sui Shui replied. Lin Yu didn't plan to enter seclusion in Heaven City. After all, he was breaking through to the original God realm this time. It might cause too much of a commotion and cause a destructive blow to Heaven City. Therefore, the two came to a place of nothingness, a place outside the edge of the 12 universes. This place was barren, without the slightest vitality to speak of. The dazzling aura no longer existed. The two stood side by side. Divine King Su, I have something to tell you. Lin Yu turned his head at this time and said slowly. Divine King Lin, please speak. Su Ishui made a gesture of invitation, natural and unrestrained. Now that the black calamity is imminent, there is no possibility between us. I can't guarantee that I can give you anything, so you don't have to do this. Lin Yu was straightforward. He had always believed that when he was with a woman, he would be responsible. But now, he didn't have this thought. Su Ishui's expression was obviously sluggish. Chapter 1259. However, she quickly smiled and said, Divine King Lin has a lot of worries. As she spoke, she grabbed Lin Yu's arm. Although I'm not as strong as you, I'm still the Divine King of a universe. Don't tell me you look down on me? Facing Su Ishui's initiative. Or does Divine King Lin have some hidden troubles? Su Ishui continued. Have you really thought it through? Lin Yu looked at Su Ishui, who was close to him, with a calm face. Su Ishui did not answer, but responded with her own actions. Her red lips kissed Lin Yu. After a quarter of an hour, she moved her head away with affection. She hugged Lin Yu tightly and said, Divine King Lin, don't tell me you have some hidden troubles like I said. There was a hint of teasing in her words. Su Ishue's attitude was already very obvious. Do you want to try? Facing the provocation, Lin Yu looked at Su Ishue calmly. Here. Su Ishue did not give up. Lin Yu hugged Su Ishue's waist. The two snuggled together. Lin Yu did not think he was a gentleman. Facing Su Ishue's initiative, he said, "Of course." After hearing Lin Yu's answer, Su Ishue kissed Lin Yu again. The two's powerful power covered this place. The outside world did not know. If someone saw it, they would definitely think that there were peerless experts cultivating here. In fact, the two were indeed cultivating. It was just that the method was a little special. Su Ishue had a mature charm. If you want to break through the original God realm, you can't do it like this. Su Ishue hugged Lin Yu. After an hour, Su Ishue snuggled up to Lin Yu. Her jade-like fingers stroked Lin Yu's chest. Satisfied. Su Ishue had a satisfied expression. Divine King Lin also had an hour to break through. Su Ishue said weakly. Is that so? Lin Yu said, it can be faster. Su Ishue was very mature and naturally knew what Lin Yu meant. 6 hours passed. Who would have thought that a godly king like me, a proud godly king, would actually lose to godly King Lin? Su Ishue's forehead was covered with sweat. This isn't the first time you've lost. Lin Yu said, there will be more in the future. Divine King Lin, please spare me. I won't dare to provoke you again. Su Ishue smiled. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Su Ishue changed into a red dress. Her snow-white legs were straight, and her jade feet were exposed as she stood in the void. They didn't forget about proper cultivation. Breaking through was extremely dangerous, especially at the original God realm. At this time, Su Ishue said seriously, you now have the power of the Exalted. It can help you in your breakthrough and infinitely weaken the bottleneck. However, I have already sensed that the Tao law you comprehended in your body is very powerful. It is both a benefit and a disadvantage. Lin Yu nodded. These words were said by Luo to Su Ishue. Towards the end, Lin Yu almost relied on his own exploration and comprehension. However, the path was not wrong. Now I am also like the spring rain, and can break through the peak of the ancestor realm. Su Ishue said. She was also ready to break through at this time. Together? Lin Yu asked. Not serious. Su Ishue showed her reproach for the first time, but she still said, wait until you break through the original God realm. The two came to the void. Lin Yu calmed his mind. Sitting cross-legged in the void. Closing his eyes, he began to think about his own state. Now there was indeed a mysterious aura in his body. This was what Su Ishue said, the power of the Exalted. This was the particularity of cultivation techniques in the fifth universe. It was useless in his own body. If it was in the body of someone who cultivated other cultivation techniques, it would be something that others yearned for even in their dreams. It could weaken the bottleneck infinitely during the breakthrough, and it could be easily broken through. However, Lin Yu now had the power of the Exalted, and he did not have the slightest carelessness, because he knew the difficulty of breaking through the original God realm this time. What Lin Yu wanted was not simply to break through the original God realm. It was to be truly flawless. The power of the Exalted could help him do this. Su Ishue had already told him before. It was just a critical point to step into the supreme realm from the original God realm. It was not a simple realm to compare. Now Lin Yu had mastered the Tao law of his first ancestor. He wanted to integrate it into his own Tao law. Smelting 10,000 Taos, this was Lin Yu's goal, to step into the supreme realm. This was something that no one had ever done before. Or rather, it was something that no one had ever done before. After Lin Yu used the devouring starry sky to smelt the ancient God Tao law of the second and third universes into his unformed inner world, Lin Yu knew that it was feasible. Although he had never done it, it did not mean that it was a dead end. Lin Yu comprehended for 10 years. He was not in a hurry to break through. He was still settling. 20 years passed. Lin Yu's cultivation began to surge like a primordial volcano and began to erupt. Even the land of nothingness was shaking. If it was in Heaven City, perhaps a wisp of Lin Yu's aura could destroy the entire Heaven City. After a short pause, the power in Lin Yu's body gradually grew stronger. At a certain moment, the bottleneck of the original God realm was broken. And now, 50 years had passed. Breaking through to the original God realm was just the first step, laying the foundation. The most important thing was to continue to evolve the Tao law he had comprehended, using the power of the original God realm that could open the heaven and earth to build his inner world. At this moment, the light spot in Lin Yu's dantian began to enlarge. Endless chaotic chi spread out, and in the end, it covered the entire area. Everything became hazy and unknowable. 50 years passed. Sui Shui had broken through the peak of the ancestor realm. At this moment, she came to Lin Yu's place of seclusion, guarding him from a distance. What kind of original God realm do you want to break through to? Although Sui Shui was only in the ancestor realm, because of Luo, she understood cultivation very well. She now saw that Lin Yu was surrounded by more than one kind of Tao law. This was also the reason for the chaotic qi. So Sui Shui could not see Lin Yu's current state, and could not help but worry. At the same time, using many kinds of Tao law to build his inner world, this kind of spirit is worthy of being my man. Although Sui Shui said that, there was still a secret worry in her heart. She had never heard that someone, after breaking through to the original God realm, could fuse many kinds of Tao law to build his inner world. This is the time and space Tao law. Sui Shui looked at the two supreme Tao law that suddenly appeared, and was incomparably shocked. Chapter 1260. Sui Shui had never heard of anyone who could use so many Tao laws at the same time when breaking through to the original God realm. At this time, Lin Yu had already sunk into a deep state of Tao comprehension. He forgot about everything and himself. At this time, he was wholeheartedly comprehending the supreme Tao laws of time and space. But even so, the Tao laws of time and space were too terrifying. Since ancient times, as long as someone grasped one of them, they would be incomparably terrifying. They would definitely be a proud son of heaven in ancient history. And Lin Yu's first ancestor had grasped two Tao laws at the same time and cultivated them to the highest realm. From Bai Xiaoli's words, he was almost about to break through to that step. But because of unknown reasons, he died. It was a pity. Lin Yu began to operate his cultivation with all his strength. When he broke through to the ancestor realm, he relied on the imprint of the 10 great monster kings. It was flawless and had laid a solid foundation. Even if he had not condensed his inner world, ordinary original God realm experts were still not his opponent. This was also why when Lin Yu stood in the God prohibition domain, the ancient gods of the second and third universes were still not his opponent. It was because the foundation that Lin Yu had laid was too terrifying. No one had ever broken through to the ancestor realm with the help of the imprint of the 10 great monster kings. This laid a solid foundation for Lin Yu to operate several Tao laws at the same time and condense his inner world. Although it was very difficult for him now, it was not like some proud sons of heaven in ancient history who used several Tao laws at the same time to establish their inner world. In the end, they ended up dead. As the Tao laws of time and space gradually solidified, the other Taos were all retreating. There was also a cold intent. Although it was very weak, it could form an equal match with the Tao laws of time and space. It inexplicably appeared in the embryonic form of Lin Yu's inner world. It was very hidden. At this time, Lin Yu was wholeheartedly immersed in refining the Tao laws of time and space. He did not feel that strange Tao law. Outside, Sui Shui's complexion changed at this time. She could clearly feel that originally illusory Tao law. Because of the time and space Tao laws, it was forced to manifest. It wanted to occupy a place in Lin Yu's inner world. 3 supreme Taoist laws and 3 ordinary Taoist laws. Even Sui Shui, who was a divine king, could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. She felt her mouth go dry and a chill run down her spine. Sui Shui already could not imagine just how terrifying her man's talent was. As time passed, Lin Yu's body seemed to be experiencing the 4 seasons and entering the cycle of reincarnation. His body, together with his divine sense, was rapidly aging. Now, he was comprehending the time Tao law. Its power was too terrifying. There were 3,000 great Taos, and among them, time and space were the most terrifying existences. At this moment, Lin Yu had only wanted to refine it, but it had already produced such a terrifying result. After reaching the ancestor realm, cultivators were practically immortal and indestructible, but now they were actually showing signs of aging. It did not take long for Lin Yu to grow from a young man to an old man. Like an old man, his body had become crooked. The aura of decay spread. Lin Yu's aura had already become very weak, almost inaudible. Sui Shui sensed this situation and was immediately shocked, muttering to herself, "Too careless." She wanted to go forward and stop Lin Yu from continuing to decline. However, the most taboo thing to do when breaking through was to disturb. It was very likely that one's Tao fruit would be destroyed directly. In serious cases, one would directly die. Especially now that Lin Yu was breaking through to the original God realm and blending with the Tao law, he could easily turn into Tao and disappear from the world. It was even more unbearable to disturb. Lin Yu also predicted this danger at this time. However, if he wanted to comprehend the time Tao law, this was necessary. He had to personally comprehend time, otherwise it would be difficult to resonate with the time Tao law. In the end, he could only dissipate under the time Tao law and become a pile of yellow soil. Back then, First Ancestor could step on the time Tao law and space Tao law and forcefully reach the top. "Why can't I?" Lin Yu said calmly in his heart. This was his character. In the continuous reincarnation of 100,000 years, he could always remain calm in the face of danger. Now he was thinking. At the same time, First Ancestor's method on the river of time was also constantly evolving in his heart. This was deliberately evolved by his first ancestor after crossing the river of time. Therefore, Lin Yu's comprehension was very deep. At the same time, he had the Divine King's order for more than 100,000 years, so he had already touched on the power of space and time. At this time, he was forcefully reversing time. He pulled himself back to his youth. The white hair on his temples turned black again. At the same time, Lin Yu actually pulled his future self back. At this time, the river of time between the two began to shatter. One could see that the future Lin Yu had a sudden look in his eyes. At the same time, the future Lin Yu was like an ordinary old man. He was wearing a straw raincoat, and his clothes were already in tatters. It was as if he hadn't changed for a long time. You can't control the future. The future Lin Yu put down the fishing rod in his hand and sighed softly. Everyone has passed away. There's only you and me left in the world. The future Lin Yu looked down at the shattered river of time and sighed. The future seemed to be very hopeless. In the end, Lin Yu didn't protect the entire world. Everything was silent. In the future, Lin Yu would be fishing for skeletons. Lin Yu could clearly sense the aura on the skeletons. It seemed to come from an old friend. Lin Yu only looked at the future Lin Yu calmly. He wasn't moved at all. Even if this was something that was bound to happen in the future, he would still do his best. The future can be changed. Lin Yu only said a sentence calmly. The future should be controlled by me. Hearing Lin Yu's words, the future Lin Yu's eyes burst out with a resplendent brilliance that hadn't appeared for a long time. The future is really hopeless. You don't know what kind of terrifying person you will face, but since that's the case, let's fight again. The future Lin Yu burst out with an unparalleled power of time and space. It seemed that in the future, Lin Yu had also mastered First Ancestors' Tao Law and had reached a very profound realm. At the same time, his cultivation was also terrifying. At this moment, he actually went against the flow of the river of time and was reflected in the present world. Facing this supreme pressure, Su Yishui immediately retreated to an unknown distance. She only saw the appearance of the river of time, but it was hazy in front of her. She didn't see the conversation between the two Lin Yu. What exactly happened? Su Yishui felt a chill down her spine. The worry in her heart couldn't help but increase. Lin Yu, the future Lin Yu, had crossed the river in a small boat. He came in front of the present Lin Yu. He transformed into a Tao fruit and slowly merged with Lin Yu. The two Lin Yu began to merge. At this moment, a golden lotus with the aura of chaos appeared 3 feet above Lin Yu's head. It interweaved with Tao and truth. The terrifying power of time and space pervaded it. This wasn't the end. Lin Yu's refinement of the law of time hadn't reached perfection. Now, the future Lin Yu's comprehension appeared in his sea of consciousness. He became incomparably bright. Lin Yu firmly believed that as long as he was still alive in the future, he could save the future. If he was invincible, he could change the future. Even if he saw the future Lin Yu's appearance now, he still didn't despair. Even if he really encountered an unimaginable opponent in the future that the future Lin Yu said, he was still fearless. Time began to flow backward. At this moment, Lin Yu was like a stone statue on the side of the river of time. He sat there without any ripples. Chapter 1261. The river of time continued to flow in reverse. This trend was irreversible. Even if this wasn't the real river of time, but just a reflection of Lin Yu's comprehension of the time Tao law, it was still terrifying. However, it was still terrifying. It was not something that Lin Yu could control. Time had already reached the time before the ancient history, and the world was dark. The sun, moon, mountains, and rivers had all collapsed. The universe was cracking inch by inch, and endless void torrents were tearing the universe apart. Lin Yu looked at all of this calmly. At this moment, on the ground below, on a mountain peak that had been cut off by someone like the spine of the world, a figure that was always shrouded in fog sat cross-legged. His posture was tall and straight, and his black hair danced in the wind. He was dressed in white and was very eye-catching. Even though he had experienced a terrifying battle, he was still very calm and untainted. At this moment, he seemed to have seen Lin Yu. "You and I are originally one. Why don't you come down and fight the Black Calamity with me?" The white-robed figure said slowly. At this moment, Lin Yu's heart was filled with doubts. This was before the ancient history. Why would his figure appear here? He could sense from the familiar aura of the man that this was definitely him. However, the aura on his body was even more terrifying and indifferent. It was as if nothing in the world could arouse his emotions. Although he was sure that it was Lin Yu, the aura on his body was different. He was very cold and would do anything to achieve his goal. At this moment, he actually reached out his hand and grabbed towards the present Lin Yu. "Become one with me and be invincible," he said slowly. "Perhaps the battle situation can still be changed." A supreme and magnificent power instantly shrouded the river of time. Lin Yu felt that just that aura was about to be destroyed and his body was about to explode. However, it was clear that the previous Lin Yu didn't really want to kill Lin Yu. Facing the methods of the previous Lin Yu didn't sit still and wait for death. He used the power 3 feet above his head. In the river of time, he could borrow the Tao fruit of the future Lin Yu to become one with himself. It was also a supreme power. It was filled with endless space-time power. At the same time, the God King's token on his body resonated. The confrontation between the two of them defied the past and present. Even the river of time was shattering. In Lin Yu's previous life, the spine of heaven and earth beneath him began to shatter inch by inch. Evidently, in his previous life, Lin Yu had stood at the pinnacle, but he had not grasped the power of time and space. However, the strength that he had displayed was truly astonishing. As an utmost being, he wielded another set of Tao laws. At this moment, the Tao law within Lin Yu's body that was connected to the time and space laws were resonating with one another. Both of them had the same feeling. Who would have thought that after so many years, Lin Yu's body still contained this Tao law? At this moment, Sui Shui could no longer withstand this power in the outside world. She couldn't help but retreat. She could only watch from afar, but there was nothing she could do. The Tao laws of the entire 12 universes were wailing. It was as if even the great Tao was retreating because of Lin Yu at this moment. Nothingness was vanishing, and everything no longer existed. The power of time and space made everything here from reality to hazy, as if it had never appeared before. I didn't expect that you have already fused with the future you. In his previous life, Lin Yu withdrew his method. He looked faintly at Lin Yu, who was above the river of time. The two of them looked at each other, and there was a mysterious feeling. It was very subtle. This life is also a life of despair. If you fuse with me now and let me step into that domain, perhaps it can be saved. In his previous life, Lin Yu said slowly. Lin Yu naturally wouldn't agree. If he fused with him and completely stayed in this era, then what would happen to the future? Do you think you can reverse the future? Lin Yu only said one sentence. Suddenly, Lin Yu in his previous life fell into silence. Lin Yu knew that in this era, his first ancestor was about to take that step, but still passed away. Even though Lin Yu was also an utmost being in his previous life, all of the utmost beings had already perished in this era. This was Lin Yu's question. If he could completely suppress the black calamity in his previous life, why couldn't he fuse with him? At that time, it would be the same if he waited bitterly for this era. Time passed without knowing how much time had passed. In his previous life, Lin Yu sighed softly and said, "My Tao laws are not weaker than time and space, but just mastering these 3 Tao laws is far from enough." He said this truth. At this moment, he didn't reveal his confidence. He knew the despair of this life. At the same time, he also understood that even if he were to fuse with his 2 future selves, he wouldn't be able to completely suppress the unknown enemy. Since you don't have the confidence, leave it to me. Lin Yu spoke at this moment. His tone was indifferent. The karma is already here. The path of survival in the future will be opened up by you. Lin Yu in his previous life said slowly at this moment. The space here condensed once again, and everything seemed to have returned to its original state. But if one were to take a closer look, that wasn't the case. This place was destroyed because of Lin Yu, and now it was reborn because of Lin Yu's sigh. In his previous life, Lin Yu turned into a dense radiance and fused into Lin Yu's body. The sea turned into mulberry fields, and the vicissitudes of time. Lin Yu had completely mastered the Tao law of time. But he didn't return to the present world immediately. He took a step out and actually took the initiative to enter the long river of time. He rowed a small boat left behind by Lin Yu and flowed down with the current. He sat cross-legged as if he was truly dead. There wasn't the slightest trace of vitality. He looked at the long river of time and the ancient history that was constantly emerging. His heart was calm. It seemed like he was traveling, but also like he was cultivating. After a long time, Lin Yu slowly swam past. Lin Yu once again returned to the present world. Reality only lasted for an instant. The long river of time here began to dissipate. 2 golden lotuses appeared above Lin Yu's head. However, there were chains intertwined on them, imprisoning the 2 golden lotuses. It was as if the great Tao of heaven and earth didn't allow them to bloom. This involved a huge karma. Lin Yu didn't stop. The power of the Tao law of space began to spread. The stars changed. For a moment, Lin Yu seemed to be in the 12 universes. For a moment, it was as if he was in an unknown place outside the universe. His figure gradually became illusory. Sometimes it appeared, sometimes it disappeared. The power of space continuously surged around him. At the same time, the falsified heaven divine art and first ancestors' methods appeared in Lin Yu's mind. The divine king token was moving rhythmically. However, he had already grasped the Tao law of time. At this moment, the two were in conflict. They were repelling each other. Lin Yu began to disintegrate as if he was going to become a part of ancient history. At the same time, heaven and earth could no longer imprint his body and wanted to escape into the void. Time and space, time and space. Time and space are originally one and can't be separated. Lin Yu muttered to himself. This was the comprehension he had obtained from the token in front of the coffin of first ancestors' God Spirit. The Tao law of time and space was incomparably profound and involved extremely deep secret. This was also why it was rumored that there were supreme artifacts in the 12 universes. Actually, it wasn't an artifact, but the comprehension of the two Tao laws of time and space. At this moment, the method recorded on the token had already appeared in Lin Yu's mind. He rebalanced the power of the Tao law of time and space. However, this was only the first step. Next, Lin Yu turned his hands and actually suppressed the two Tao laws. The original God realm is to grasp the Tao law. Since you have grasped it, you have to listen to your orders. It's not true balance. Lin Yu said slowly. At this moment, his inner world had already begun to open. However, this wasn't the end. Chapter 1262. In the original God realm, the number of layers of the inner world determined one's combat strength and future achievements. At this moment, the vast first layer of the inner world had already been formed. It was filled with endless space-time power. Since it's the creation of the inner world, there should be complete Tao laws. The most important ones should be the changes in time and space. Lin Yu already had his own understanding. At this moment, he was taking that step. The power of the time and space laws was gradually entering the inner world. Plants began to grow, and the rise and fall of mountains and rivers gradually began to take shape. Birds, beasts, insects, fish, and other creatures also began to appear. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. Lin Yu's first layer of the inner world was finally formed. And now, he had completely mastered the space laws. And at this moment, 3 feet above Lin Yu's head, a lotus flower formed in the center. It was filled with endless mysteries. However, it was no longer shrouded in chaotic aura. Pop, the great Tao, was silent. After mastering the time and space laws, the lotus flower in the center bloomed. This was the condensation of Lin Yu's current Tao fruit. Among them, there was a small golden person sitting cross-legged with a slender figure. The small person inside was exactly the same as Lin Yu. However, his eyes were slightly closed, with a sense of tranquility and peace. This was the current Lin Yu. On the left and right were the condensation of the previous and future Lin Yu's Tao fruit. Now, for unknown reasons, it couldn't bloom. It contained a terrifying power. Without a doubt, this paved a great Tao for Lin Yu's future path. As the current Lin Yu's Tao fruit appeared, Lin Yu's second layer of the inner world also began to appear. In the end, it slowly condensed. The majestic power directly manifested in the void. Luo, who was traveling in the 12 universes, had already sensed this aura. However, she didn't come. Luo knew that this movement was caused by Lin Yu. However, as Lin Yu broke through, his inner world actually began to reflect the entire 12 universes. It was like a vast universe that enveloped the entire 3 realms and 5 regions. Although it was very illusory, it carried endless mighty power. Its size did not seem to be weaker than the 12 universes. This was only the first level of Lin Yu's inner world, but it already had such a terrifying scene. The second layer was formed. The space here was completely different from the first floor. It was filled with a desolate aura. Following Lin Yu's breakthrough, the aura of the 12 universes enveloped Lin Yu's inner world. At this time, Qin Wunyan and the others also began to break through due to the reflection of Lin Yu's inner world. The entire 12 universes were like bamboo shoots after the spring rain. The cultivators inside began to break through one after another. Because Lin Yu was breaking through to the original God realm, the competence of the 12 universes had increased by one level. The third level's inner world began to converge. At this moment, Luo was by the side of a large river. Looking at the illusory image of the inner world in the sky, he muttered, "Not bad, it's already the third level." The original God realm could condense the first level of the inner world. It was already enough to be called the ancestor of the current 12 universes. Condensing the third level of the inner world would make one a proud son of heaven in ancient times. But this was not the end. After the third level was condensed, then the fourth level, the fifth level, Luo could not sit still anymore. He stood up and stared at the changes in the sky. Su Yishui, who was on the side, also narrowed her beautiful eyes. From the ancient books, she knew the meaning of the number of levels of the inner world. Now, Lin Yu had condensed the fifth level. Among the creatures that had broken through to the original God realm, he was already in existence that was as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. Moreover, the fourth and fifth levels were almost condensed in one go. Lin Yu still had energy left. After the sixth level, the speed of Lin Yu's condensing of the inner world slowed down significantly. At this moment, the commotion caused by Lin Yu's breakthrough. It had already shaken the nearby universes. In the eighth universe, the Supreme Grand Disciple who was in deep sleep, the bloated ancient god, opened his eyes at this moment. He is breaking through. With this power, I'm afraid that the number of levels condensed in the inner world has already exceeded the sixth level. This was the first time in a long time that the ancient god of the eighth universe had such a serious expression. He directly disappeared from the land of hibernation, stepped into the territory gate, and came to the 12 universes. His eyes shot out two gray lights and looked in the direction of Lin Yu. In fact, the entire universe was now reflected in Lin Yu's inner world. Qin Wunyan and the others also had a premonition of the benefits of Lin Yu's breakthrough. It could be said that when a person achieves the Tao, even his chickens and dogs will ascend to heaven. He had already sent out a message, asking Lin Xiu, the dark divine official, and the others in other universes to quickly return. This was a huge benefit to their cultivation. This was also the reverse nurturing of an original god breaking through in his own universe. The seventh level was condensing. But now there was a bottleneck. Lin Yu began to operate the power of time and space. At the same time, the power of the Grand Supreme began to be injected into the seventh level of the inner world. Only now is he using the power of the Grand Supreme? This child is really amazing. Luo sensed the aura of the ancient god of the eighth universe and now appeared beside him. Greetings, junior uncle. The godly king of the eighth universe was no longer lazy at this time. He was staring in the direction of Lin Yu's breakthrough. I thought you didn't recognize me, Luo said jokingly. Little Nightmare wouldn't dare. The ancient god of the eighth universe cupped his hands and said at this time. In fact, the ancient god of the eighth universe was a little older than Luo. The two were in the same era. They were all sealed before the ancient history and only came out after the chaos had passed. But Luo's seniority was there. But as for why the ancient god of the eighth universe called Luo junior uncle, and the relationship between the first godly kings of the eighth universe and the fifth universe, it was unknown. After using the power of the Grand Supreme, Lin Yu's seventh level of the inner world began to appear. Maybe this person is the one who was divined by a supreme back then, the one who will face the calamity in the future. Luo fell into memories at this time. In the past, a supreme's divination technique was the best in both ancient and modern times. He had once divined a glimmer of hope for the future. At this time, they looked at Lin Yu with a solemn expression. Do you think he will condense the legendary ninth level? Luo said slowly to the ancient god of the eighth universe beside him. It's not impossible. The ancient god of the eighth universe, Nightmare, replied. But now both of them were secretly worried. They came from that era and knew what it meant to condense the ninth level of the inner world. It already involved a taboo. It was unspeakable. In the blink of an eye, 50 years had passed. The current Lin Yu seemed to be gradually unable to hold on. The eighth level had already begun to condense, but it was very slow. It seemed like it would take a long time to succeed. It seems like it's not very possible. Nightmare sighed. Luo shook his head. At this time, Lin Yu used the power of time of the godly king order to accelerate the time around him. At the same time, it resonated with the Tao of time that he had mastered. The eighth level of the inner world began to form at an astonishing speed. This caused Nightmare's expression to change involuntarily. Don't forget the methods of the Supreme of the 12 universes back then. Luo seemed to have guessed this scene long ago. He has also mastered the laws of time and space. Nightmare looked in Lin Yu's direction and thought of the Supreme of the 12 universes that he had only met a few times back then. He muttered, in terms of temperament, there are some similarities. I wonder if he can reach the level of that Supreme back then. Chapter 1263. Between the Two's Conversation. Lin Yu's eighth layer inner world had been completely condensed. At this moment, Lin Yu was sitting cross-legged, sinking into silence. Everything was stagnant. It seemed that Lin Yu was exhausted and couldn't continue condensing the ninth layer inner world. If it's the eighth layer inner world, Luo shook his head. He had experienced that era. It wasn't that the heaven's pride of that era hadn't condensed the eighth layer inner world, but their achievements hadn't reached the supreme level. The eighth layer and the ninth layer are the difference between heaven and earth. If you can't condense the ninth layer, reaching the supreme level is just a fool's dream. Luo also shook his head. 200 years had passed since Lin Yu had broken through to the original God realm. However, Luo Yan and Sui Shui hadn't left. They had been watching. They all hoped that Lin Yu could have greater achievements. However, to be able to condense the eighth layer inner world in this era is already amazing enough. Luo said, in the war of that era, the foundation of the great Tao had been destroyed. Now that the heavenly Tao is incomplete, it's hard to give birth to such experts. Just when the two thought that Lin Yu had reached his limit, 20 years had passed. It was like a snap of the fingers. Above the eighth layer, great power began to appear. This, Luo and Yen were shocked. Lin Yu had started to condense the ninth layer inner world after 20 years. However, Lin Yu seemed to be just trying. The ninth layer hadn't even appeared yet. So he's been accumulating. Luo suddenly realized. Before Lin Yu condensed the inner world, he didn't seem to be strenuous. He should still have some strength left. However, the ninth layer involved a taboo. Although Lin Yu didn't have anyone to guide him, the first ancient character he had mastered gave birth to a vague feeling in his heart. He had deduced some things, and now he could confirm it. He had 80% confidence in his heart, so he started to condense the ninth layer inner world. The great power was like the creation of the world. At this moment, the dark god priest and the others had returned. They were sitting cross-legged outside, using the reverse nurturing from Lin Yu's breakthrough to the original god realm to increase their cultivation base rapidly. Some of the divine kings were showing signs of breaking through again. This was especially so for the great solar boundless Buddha Lord. Because of the ancient word that Lin Yu had passed down, His body was currently shrouded in a layer of mysterious energy. It was extremely profound. He had already begun to attempt to break through to the ancestor realm. If that was the case, the 12 universes would become even more powerful. The power of an ancestor realm already belonged to the pinnacle of a universe. As long as such a powerhouse appeared, it represented the prosperity of a universe. It's no wonder that the cosmos with original God realm experts is so prosperous. The dark divine priest said slowly. The reverse nurturing at the original God realm was too frightening. It could make all the living beings in the universe receive the favor. However, they could also feel how difficult it was for Lin Yu to break through. At this moment, there were only wishes in his heart. In the later stages of cultivation, the process of breaking through would often be extremely dangerous, and one could easily be consigned to eternal damnation. Therefore, the Jade Pure Goddess, Qin Yi, and the others were filled with endless worries. The Jade Pure Goddess appeared to be more indifferent. After experiencing so many things together, she knew that with Lin Yu's talent, breaking through to the original God realm should not be a problem. However, Lin Yu was only stepping into a higher realm now. He needed to reach the legendary 9th level of the original God realm. He's about to succeed. Luo was pleasantly surprised. He could clearly see it. Lin Yu's power had become incomparably mysterious, as if it did not belong to the world and had transcended. The world could no longer imprint his shadow. The 9th level of the inner world was slowly condensing, and it already had an embryonic form. However, at this moment there was a sudden change. A mysterious force appeared in Lin Yu's inner world. One could see that black spots began to appear on Lin Yu's body, making him look ferocious and terrifying. The taboo has appeared. Luo's eyes widened. They knew some secret. If a cultivator wanted to break through to the original God realm and condense the 9th level of the inner world, all kinds of strange things would happen. They would either die suddenly, get lost, or have an indescribable change in their body. At this moment, black spots began to appear on Lin Yu's body. They looked like livor mortis, but they had a certain shape. It was like some kind of supreme rune with a strange aura. Lin Yu's life aura was rapidly fading. Even the shadow of the inner world that was reflected in the 12 universes began to shatter, gradually eroded by the black spots. What happened? The great sun-boundless Buddha had now revealed the aura of the ancestor realm. His gaze was deep as he looked in the direction of Lin Yu's breakthrough. These black spots made people feel fear on a deep level. Everyone was so shocked that they were speechless. They stood rooted to the ground. The great Tao origin of the 12 universes was being eroded. Luo and Yen made their move. They had both inherited the supreme means. They came to the 12 universes and used some kind of ancient technique to suppress the changes in the 12 universes. Not long after, their expressions became grave. Even if they used the supreme inheritance, they still felt that it was difficult to resist this trend. At this moment, they were gradually unable to hold on. How profound was the inheritance of the Supreme Being? Suddenly, 4 red pillars appeared in the 12 universes. The supreme runes on them began to prevent the black spots from spreading. At the same time, Yan's power skyrocketed again. A white-green light appeared. Great Dream Heaven Art. Nightmare used its supreme inheritance, and the black spots disappeared for a short while. But as time passed, their realms were not enough to use the supreme inheritance in its entirety. Then, Lin Yu's strange changes. The power of the black spots became blazing, spreading to the entire universe. No, we have to deal with the origin. Luo's forehead was already covered in cold sweat. As a late-stage original God realm expert, he could no longer suppress the strange changes of an original God realm cultivator who was breaking through. Condensing the 9th level of the inner world is indeed terrifying, Yen said slowly. He was no longer lazy and used all his strength. There's no other way now. We can only hope that Lin Yu can resist this strange black spot. Luo and Yen began to resist the black spots to the greatest extent, preventing them from spreading further. 10 years passed. The black spot had reached its peak. They were like numerous black ancestral dragons, vast and boundless, enveloping the 12 universes. The strange runes on them began to corrode heaven and earth. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Lin Yu's body had already been corroded beyond recognition. His cheeks were covered in black spots. But suddenly, he opened his eyes. It turned out that he had been waiting for an opportunity, which was when the black spots were at their peak. Only then would the strange origin truly appear. This was also why Lin Yu had stopped for a period of time after condensing the 8th level of the inner world. Through the power of the first origin rune, he had foreseen the threat that would follow. Several Taoist principles appeared in Lin Yu's inner world, which had been corroded beyond recognition. The time and space laws transformed into 2 supreme sword lights that cut through time and space. They charged toward him. He's going to kill himself. Luo's expression changed drastically. They were already exhausted from resisting the black spots. Could it be that Lin Yu had recovered his clarity and discovered that he couldn't remove the indescribable changes in his body? Could it be that he wanted to kill himself and destroy the black spots with him? No. Qin Yi saw what Lin Yu was doing and fell to the ground. After several hundred years of breakthroughs, could it be that, in the end, he would only end up killing himself? Chapter 1264. The sword qi formed by time and space laws instantly penetrated Lin Yu's eroded body. Boom, the 12 universes shook. Blood rained down between heaven and earth. The black spot and Lin Yu's inner world dissipated at the same time. The blood rain infected every region of the 12 universes. This was a phenomenon that occurred because of the fall of a godly king. Heaven's wail. Billions of beings also sensed it. They knelt on the ground, tears flowing from their eyes. Because of Lin Yu's existence, the 12 universes prospered. But now, Lin Yu had passed away. Because of the destruction of time and space laws, Lin Yu's existence had been obliterated. The statues built in the 3 realms and 5 regions had been shattered. They turned into powder and dissipated between heaven and earth. Divine King Lin is the greatest in history. How could he die just because of a breakthrough? The dark priest murmured in a low voice, unable to believe this fact. The godly king's order has the power of time and space, but Lin Yu used time and space laws to destroy himself. Maybe he really can't come back. Luo analyzed. Su Yishui stood in the void in a daze. Although she hadn't known Lin Yu for long, she was deeply attracted to Lin Yu. Now that Lin Yu had passed away, Su Yishui's eyes were slack, and her realm was in an unstable state. Godly King Lin, you can't die like this. Little Holy King, where are you? Are you lying to me again? Qin Yi's eyes were full of tears. She had known Lin Yu for a long time and had gone through many things together. Qin Yi didn't believe that the confident and powerful Lin Yu would die like this. The veterans who had followed Lin Yu all the way from the Hongmeng continent all the way to Heaven City stood by Lin Yu's side. They didn't shed a single tear as they knelt on the ground and placed their weapons on the ground. The beings of the 12 universes fell silent. You haven't led us to build an immortal era. Qin Wunyan trembled. However, no matter what they said, there was no response. At this moment, Lin Yu's inner world shadow had completely dissipated between heaven and earth, not leaving a single trace. Qin Yi had already fainted from crying. The jade pure divine maiden was also trembling. 500 years passed just like that. The jade pure goddess and the others were all dressed in plain clothes. They had stayed in the main hall for 500 years, not leaving at all. They just stood there in a daze. They wanted to condense a statue of Lin Yu, but each time they suffered a huge backlash. Lin Yu's body had become a taboo. Su Yishui also didn't return to the 5th universe. Instead, she stayed with Goddess Yuqing and the others to guard the coffin. This showed her true feelings for Lin Yu. Luo and Nightmare had already left and returned to their respective universes. They had witnessed the fall of a genius of their generation, and all of them were filled with regret. If the heaven and earth were not incomplete, perhaps Lin Yu would have really condensed 90% of his inner world. An era beheads a genius. Those were the last words they said before they left. The years were changing. Without the existence of Lin Yu, the 6th and 7th universes had begun to stir. They wanted to take action and occupy the 2nd, 3rd, and 10th universes. They wanted to obtain endless resources from them. Due to the universe's agreement, they had been hindering them secretly. Lin Yu's death was great news for them. At the same time, some who had been neutral also secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Lin Yu's existence was a huge pressure for them. Like a huge rock, they had to be vigilant at all times. Although Lin Yu had already promised that he wouldn't take action and conquer other universes. But as long as Lin Yu existed, no one could stop him when he reached the invincible realm. The ancient gods of the 7th and 6th universes had already begun to secretly discuss. Now, after leaving the 12 universes, the ancient gods of the 5th and 8th universes had fallen into a deep sleep again because they had consumed too much energy. Now is a rare opportunity. Maybe we can find an opportunity to take the 4 universes under our command. The ancient god of the 6th universe was a skinny old man. At this time, he and the ancient god of the 7th universe were sitting in the main hall. The god kings of the 6th and 7th universes stood quietly on the side. My master is about to return from the realm C. Why don't we find an excuse to completely obliterate the forces of the 12 universes in 100 years? The ancient god of the 7th universe said slowly. Now that they don't have the protection of the arrogant god kings of the 12 universes, let's see who else can protect them, the ancient god of the 6th universe continued. They already had full confidence in their success. There's no hurry. Let's put pressure on the people of the 12 universes first. If they take the initiative, then it's okay. Otherwise, the ancient god of the 7th universe had a cold look in his eyes. At this time, although the great sun boundless Buddha and the others had made great progress in their realms, but they also realized something. There were invaders in the other 3 universes from time to time. The great sun boundless Buddha had been injured many times. The enemy was very powerful, and they were holding original God realm artifacts. If the great sun boundless Buddha hadn't grasped half of the ancient word, he might have been killed. The current great sun boundless Buddha was one of the only 2 ancestor realm powerhouses in the 12 universes. As long as he fell, the 12 universes would completely decline. After resisting many invasions, Lin Xiu also realized something. In the 12 universes, all the powerhouses had returned and began to discuss. After God King Lin left, the other universes began to stir again, Qin Wunyan said helplessly. Because the 12 universes had the means left by Lin Yu and Sui Shui, there were no strong enemies to invade. But they had encountered many explorations. Do we have to give up the 2nd, 3rd, and 10th universes? Sea God Dragon was worried. At this time, he was already at the late stage of the God King realm. But there was worry in his eyes. This is the foundation that God King Lin led us to. How can we give it up? The Dark Priest said loudly. Our 12 universes are not weaker than others. If the other universes have designs on us, we won't hesitate to fight. After so many years, although Lin Zhanyu was still like a child, his mind had matured a lot. He now had the strength of the middle stage ancestor realm, and his words carried weight. The discussion lasted for 3 consecutive days. However, most of the people who advocated protecting the foundation that Lin Yu led them to did not hesitate to fight. Especially Lin Xiu, although he was taciturn, he also opened his mouth at this time. Wait for me to break through. Lin Xiu was already at the half-step ancestor realm at this time. If not for his previous injuries, he would have broken through to the ancestor realm long ago. Moreover, the power in his body was very mysterious and had a strange aura, but he maintained his rationality and did not fall into it. There was a determination in his eyes, as if he had made some important decision. The great sun-boundless Buddha looked at Lin Xiu and did not say a word. He also knew what Lin Xiu was preparing to do. Be careful, the dark priest reminded. Lin Xiu walked out of the hall, returned to the 10th universe, and began his closed-door cultivation. And at this time, ancient tokens appeared in the various universes, reflecting in the sky. 1,500 years, the universe conference was to be held again. Obviously, this time, it was also targeted at the 12 universes. Without Lin Yu holding down the fort, the other universes began to stir. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.